Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of GRAPPL. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And it is unbelievably JP. 1 week, or maybe 1 week's dramatic. The week before All In, I got into a bit of a conversation with some Americans today as to whether the week begins on a Sunday or a Monday, which makes no sense to me. It's Monday. So therefore All In is next week. I feel like Sunday is part of the weekend, which is called the weekend for a reason. Is that not like the term? I don't know. They do things weird. To be fair, we've got a few weird things as well. Metrics.
They put the month before the day, which I've never gotten.
But yeah, that's weird. Throws you, doesn't it? You want it to go like longer and bigger. Yeah, makes no sense. But we are here, which means we're a week away from All In. Getting nervous. With a few announcements related to that. Whole load of things going on. I'll be making my way down to London close to this time next week. By the time people are listening to this, I'm going down the Wednesday. We're making a bit of a week of it. There's a few wrestling shows down there. I won't be caught dead at, which we'll be previewing on next week's Spotlight.
Yes,
next week's Spotlight will be a Tuesday show. Quick programming. And if you're listening on the audio, that means you'll get it Wednesday morning, or you watch on the YouTube replay, you'll be getting it on the Wednesday, because we'll be doing a full big preview of everything going on Wembley week next week. But can you believe it, JP? This is how close we are, and getting a bit nervous now. Got a big show coming. Is in the building, as I mentioned last week. It's all very real.
I think between ourselves and Braden and Davey from Poison Rana, we booked this out well in advance. People knew what they were getting for the show. The card isn't a surprise at this stage.
Tony Khan fucked us over with his fucking 1 o'clock doors or whatever it is. Not 1 o'clock. It's like half 3. It's fucking ridiculous. I got that email today from Ticketmaster. Did you?
I did.
Our tickets still aren't available, are they? But we've been told that the doors are going to be open for Wembley earlier, which means our show is going to be from 12 o'clock. So come along at any time from that point, from 12. We'll probably be on stage from about 1. We've got some stuff lined up, and the Poison Rana lads have got some stuff round up. But we will definitely have at least the stage side of things wrapped up in time for if people do want to leave early to get to Wembley to beat the queues. We will be done before you need to get off for those 3:30 doors. Or if you want to hang around and have a pint, I'm probably going to go to the show about 10 to 5. I'm not asked. I'll be knocking around having a pint, so you can stick around still if you want.
Were you a kind of like, I go when you go to a football game, I get in there effectively just before kickoff. That's the kind of person I generally am.
It depends, sometimes I do like taking it in. Yeah, maybe I can understand that side of it.
Depends on the circumstance, I suppose, for it as much as anything. But I would say it's very easy to get from the Trinity Bar to Wembley. That's something that will be like pretty straightforward. It's not like the hellish days when I saw the Rolling Stones there, which was just a fucking nightmare getting to and from. Like 94, but this is like some, in terms of us being there, have a pint with us, and we'll amble down like the cool kids getting in there last as I wander into the seat during the pre-show, shaking my head in disgust.
Well, on that note, we will have as well. It's kind of like it's not an official announcement. It's not even we call it an official after party. But if you are at a loss of something to do after Wembley, and you're making I'm sure people are making plans because of the fucked up trains, which of course has happened. Of course, there's a strike on Saturday. It's a Rev Pro show day, so that's going to happen. But once you've figured out what you're doing, and if you are one of the people who's worried that Tony Khan's going to kick us out of the stadium, at like 2 minutes to 11, you're going to have an hour to get the tube, just fuck it off and come back to Trinity with us. I'll be around. We'll have a few pints. Davey and Braden have got a few things organised as far as might even be a bit of karaoke. As we talked about in the pre-show, the Trinity website might be a little bit misleading. Seems to indicate there is an after party for the WWF show at Wembley, which is a bit like if your mum or dad wrote a description of like, if I was just at my mum's for tea tonight, explaining to her what I'm doing at Wembley next week. Just it was hard going. She'd probably tell her mate, he's going to the WWF. It's at Wembley. That's probably what she'd say. So that's what the script.
That wrestling, the American wrestling, another one. Is the Undertaker going to be there? Yeah. The entire What Culture video that bloke put up on TikTok, it's that kind of stuff.
It literally says that we love our friends at Trinity, but it says something like
does Tatanka still do it? No.
It says something like the after party after the WWF show at Wembley. So we'll get that fixed up. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should leave it. It's very complimentary about us as podcasters. But the basic deal, and credit to the Poison Rana lads, they've done the heavy lifting when it comes to arranging this, Davey and Braden. But if you've been to our live show in the day, it'll be free entry. And if as a bonus, because we're nice like that. If you've just been to Wembley and you can prove you went to Wembley, the Trinity folks who are really good people, I did a great chat with them when I was down there. Have said you'd be able to get in for free as well. So yeah, free entry, and come and hang out with us until the early hours if you want to wait out. If you want to do the the old thing of waiting out the storm with a pint, it's probably the best shout, to be honest. I don't want to be stuck on a tube for an hour getting back to my hotel. I'm just gonna knock back to Trinity and let the whole world blow over.
Yeah, it's a bank holiday. Let cut loose about what you've seen for the previous 7.5 hours of this, because you're going to need to by the end of it. And you might just need the walk there, if nothing else, because your ass is going to be numb given the amount of time we're going to be expected to stay in those seats for.
You'll be up smoking. You'll find a way. You'll find a way out at the back.
Finding a way with it in is going to be the real challenge, but you let Uncle JP work away about that.
There we go. JP's your man for any tips like that. So yeah, that's kind of the mini announcement really. So yeah, if anyone's coming, and also we have had a couple of people returning tickets on our Discord because of the travel issues. We are sold out, and we do have a waiting list as well, which is pretty packed. But if you were still wanting to come along, do shoot us a message or post something in the Discord. You never know, might be able to sort something out, and we'll endeavour to get as many people as we can in, despite being sold out. So yeah, that's kind of all that stuff going on. But yeah, what else have we been up to this week, JP? Been doing a million things. It's all go as we go towards All In.
Mate, it's mental. It's just the amount of stuff we've got going on the go currently. Like last night, for example, we recorded the deep cut. It was King of the Mountain and King of the Discord, Conor O'Loughlin. His deep cut choice, which was a cracking one, Christian in TNA, which I thoroughly enjoyed doing with you. And it made me kind of reevaluate lots of bits about him as well. And, it's interesting having like kind of a dive into TNA around that point of time, because there was hope. There was a degree of optimism. It doesn't last long, precisely till someone mentions, let's have a King of the Mountain match. And that's normally when things start to deteriorate very quickly.
I skipped over that. Like, that was the thing, like, doing that show. I was
nervous, the end.
If anything. Because, like, I'm a big Christian guy now, but I definitely wasn't back in the day. But I remember the big news story and I remember it being a big deal. So, yeah, doing the whole, Connor's always the man when it comes to putting together the homework. But I was honestly pleasantly surprised by a lot of it. Like, there was stuff with Rhino I really enjoyed he'd done, stuff with Abyss. There was that home invasion angle is one of the greatest angles. Now that I've seen it, I would absolutely say is one of the greatest angles I've ever seen. If you enjoyed the swerve angle on Dynamite the other week, this feels like it was its precursor as Abyss and Alex Shelley, wasn't it, with the camera cutting Christian off his house. We got a through the keyhole tour of his house. We were there looking at his nice little water fountain that he had, a couple of nice features in the house, nice little pool as well, JP, with a lovely cover on it. We had a big chat about that as well.
Don't even get anywhere near the garden, do we? It was proper nose. It does operate, and you said, as you made the point of one shot as well. Now I don't know if that's like a deliberate artistic choice they were trying to do, a la Sam Mendes in 1917. I suspect not, but like still at the same time you're thinking like fair fucks to them. But it was a cracking angle. Plus you get to spy on his house. He has a water fountain in there, which seems to fuel the theory that you have just to be a wrestler. You need to drink just shit tons of water. Like honestly, you like just to absolutely nail it. But yeah, that was a cracking show to do as well. I mean, this week, it's and because we, as you mentioned, we are the week before All In. We're kind of getting into the All In spirit. Let's see how long that tone lasts, because we're going to be doing All In and observe this kind of special just in the build up to it. We're going to hope to be recording it this week. We are going to be doing. Also, next, as you mentioned earlier on, Spotlight's going to be on Tuesday. So we're going to be doing effectively like an all-in week preview. So all the shows that are in around there as well. So for those of you who subscribe to the Patreon, and hopefully the Spotify integration with Patreon is kind of
seems to be working.
Yeah.
So essentially, we're in a bit of a beta stage with Patreon and Spotify right now. But if you're someone who's never subscribed to the Patreon, and anyone who does, we always appreciate your support. But yeah, if Patreon's interfaces put you off, you still need to go there and sign up. So that's a bit of a negative. But the positive is you can link it to your Spotify account now, and all you do is once you've signed up, no technical messing around. You log into Spotify, you sync the two accounts, and then you can on your Spotify you can literally get all of our Patreon shows. The feed itself is a click away. I'll put that in the show notes as well. If you want to go through it that way, just click the Spotify link. All our Patreon shows are there, and then when you try and play one, it'll ask you to link to Patreon and sign up there. But I know that's been popular with a few because Spotify is probably the way I mostly listen to stuff these days. So yeah, get on board with us there, either via the Patreon or via Spotify. And there'll be some YouTube stuff coming as well. And now might be a good time to jump on, as we have discussed with our patrons. There might be a bit of a couple of changes with the pricing and the tiers coming up in the not too distant future. So yeah, if you're ever going to sign up, I would just say now might be the one as well. But yeah, it's all going on over there. So yeah, a million things going on. Patreon.com/GRAPPL. Get all of that great stuff. But yeah, outside of that, all in it next week. Look forward to that. And yeah, we'll all look forward to getting the as Chris has reminded us in the chat there, the great cocktail menu that Davey Portman's put together as well. The Boom, the Muscle Buster, the Orange Punch, and the Storm Zero. Oh, and the Coffin Drop, which is what's that? The Kraken Rum and Cherry Showers dropped in an energy drink. It's cherry sours, sorry. That sounds like a Will Cooling drink if I ever heard one. So yeah, we're all going to be pretty wasted next week. Is basically what we know, JP.
I think so. I think I might be going a couple of those 585 ones, the Boom and the Muscle Buster, before moving on to the Orange Punch and the Storm Zero, which Jaffa Cake Rum. I mean, I think that has William Cooling, like you said, written all over it for that one. But yeah, be really good fun. I hope all of you who are able to come along and see us at All In It, which all roads lead to there, are able to join us for the after party for some of those drinks as well. But yeah.
That's it. Come hang out. Come see our lovely faces, not just on the YouTube, but you can also watch this podcast
in real life and everything.
That's it. 3D. There you go. When I met JP last week, when I went to Oxford, you were like, "You got taller." I was like, "No, mate, you just see me on a screen most of the time."
I know. I was like, "Fucking hell! Like, have I shrunk or something? Like, what's going on? Is there a Benjamin Button effect going on?" No, I'm getting older, but bloody hell, I don't need that happening in my life.
Maybe I am. Maybe I'm getting taller with age. But yeah, you can see us all in 3D. But yeah, that's enough plugs for 1 week, JP. Let's get into the stuff we're going to talk about this week. And because the obvious thing we're going to talk about, JP, is that it's the week before All In. So, All In's next week. Let's get hyped. Let's no, maybe not. I feel like we got our Venom out on the weekend show. So there's a clip of that on the YouTube page where we maybe angrily reacted to some news stories out there. I think maybe we've moved from anger to acceptance. You might get a bit more of a mature JP and Benno today, because we are grown-ups who can act like grown-ups when need be. But unfortunately, AEW's biggest show ever has been shunted back to the back of the page when it comes to the news cycle. As there is other matters going on at AEW. Again, the week before their biggest show ever, as we're all just talking about CM Punk again, and the drama and the backstage nonsense. I was at a train back before trying to catch up on everything that was going on. JP, I don't even know where to start with it. Punk taken after Collision this week, which was all right. I can't imagine we're going to spend a lot of time on Collision this week. It was a decent little show. Again, most noteworthy thing was that, unfortunately, Punk, despite having, a relatively lukewarm program with Samoa Joe, that got heated up a little bit on Collision. Good, productive work when it comes to heating up the feud between him and the heel he's already beat a few weeks ago in a throwaway tournament match that they definitely knew they were going to be wrestling at Wembley when they planned that. Anyway, he's got that feud going on. There was stuff going on with Bullet Club Gold. That's gone a bit, cold. He still keeps calling himself the real world's champion and taking shots at MJF, but that put that on the back burner as well. Obviously, there's the Ricky Starks issue as well, because Ricky Starks has cut a killer promo to open Collision. When we eventually get to talk about the contents of Collision, I will be putting that over. But no, he didn't have anything to say about Ricky Starks. Instead, after the show, he saw a fan sign and decided to have a go at Hangman Page, because that's the one member of the Elite he's allowed to have a go at. I think is reading between the lines. As Punk was talking about what did they call them? His action figures were still on the pegs or something.
Still on
like
the
that.
pegs. A peg warmer.
Called him the peg warmer and lost his way, lost his train of thought as he was saying it. I mean, there's been multiple news stories that's come out since, because what it did was created a landslide of stories of like, oh, by the way, also Hangman Page was supposed to appear at Collision, or not even on the show, but to record a pre-tape, but got to the at least the town, maybe the building, depending on the report you believe, and was told no. You had to go to another location to record this promo. We then got even more kind of stories about that with I refuse to to call him anything other than Dolph Ziggler Jr. That fucking knobhead. He got turned away apparently from Collision because of issues with Punk. We've had more detail come out on that today via PW Torch. Various rumors of Matt Hardy claiming the same thing had happened to him. Christopher Daniels was a name that Dave Meltzer threw out there today as somebody who, despite being head of talent relations, was not allowed to attend Collision anymore because of his beef with Punk. It's a fucking shit show, JP. Like, sloppy shop doesn't sum it up today. Obviously, there's been some pushback as to which parts of those stories are true today and which parts maybe are a little bit exaggerated. But if any of that is true, and we know the one thing we do know is true is the Punk promo on Hangman Page. Like, that's bad enough. Like, I mean, if Punk on, I love, me, I love CM Punk. He's my favorite wrestler ever. But if he can't concentrate on one of the fucking 4 feuds he's building right now, and he has to just take some shots at Hangman Page for a match that isn't happening anytime soon, like, his head's in the wrong place as well. It's just a mess on all sides this today.
Absolute shit show. And it kind of goes to, it feels like all of the issues with AEW that have been bubbling to the surface are all coming through, and it all comes under this sort of big banner of ill discipline, really, doesn't it? First up in CM Punk. I mean, I know in a very world of simplistic narratives, it's easy to position people in this sort of ridiculously tribal way that you're either pro elite or pro Punk, and there's no in between. We have happily said that CM Punk is an arsehole. All of this behavior is never stuff that kind of makes you deviate away from that. That's who he is. He is this kind of person, and he's taken the piss. And he's taken the piss because he can take the piss, and he knows that there really isn't going to be any serious repercussions. Why? Because to a certain extent, he still realizes he holds the key to a potential billion-dollar deal in a very movable media landscape. He knows the leverage he has. That's why he does this stuff. He knows how far he can push it. So he's going to push it. And he doesn't give 2 shits. And it's just like he sees, and he just goes, I'm just going to work my own storyline. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck what you're telling me that I should be doing. This is what I am going to go ahead and do. And what are they going to do about it? And it's going to be absolutely nothing other than kind of work around it. I mean, Shaz, one of our patrons, had always had it right when she just had him down as a messy bitch. And he is the messiest of bitches. There's no getting around it. But this is what he's like. This is the kind of person he's like. And it's difficult because, as I think I've made clear, I'm not a fan necessarily of the way that the elite kind of behave and their attitude towards their job necessarily within the company. But CM Punk is kind of insistent on just shit stirring and always kind of doing it. And it doesn't matter what you tell him to stop. He is not going to stop doing it. I mean, the Hangman Page stuff is completely needless and unnecessary.
I think even he knows that, because the subsequent reports that have come out today, Nick Hausman specifically said that he regrets it. Different reports on whether he's apologized or not. I think he sees that at least. That's growth, is it not? That's personal growth, maybe.
He could try not doing it in the first place. That would be a start. It's all very well apologizing after you've robbed the bank, but you still shouldn't have robbed the bank in the first place. I'm not saying he's robbed a bank. Just a shit analogy. But yeah. Like, the Hangman Page stuff is neat. Now, if you told me if this was a match we were getting at All Out and it's just like, right, we'll scrap everything else, we're having a rematch of that, I'd be like, fucking get in. That's a proper match with big stars and a big program for Hangman Page. I'll be perfectly happy with that. But the other stuff regarding like Ryan Nemeth and Matt Hardy,
is that a thing?
Yeah, apparently so. I mean,
to be fair, it's pretty. I make jokes, but it is pretty ugly, like the situation.
Yeah,
because basically, if you want the cliff notes, is that he called Punk out when Punk
softest man alive.
called him the softest man alive. That was the quote. And then, first night back, Punk apparently cornered him, and it all got very heated. And it is quite ugly, to be fair, because like
it is.
as much as he's a useless member of the roster, like when you are a useless member of the roster and CM Punk is the biggest merchandise shifted star, then there's quite the power imbalance there, isn't there? And the fact that he hasn't been on TV, I mean, it's like, to be honest, it's like Colt Cabana. Like, he's not exactly a person I'm crying isn't on TV, and it's not exactly a cause I'm going to fight for. But at the same time, he's not going to win that battle, is he? And the fact that he's, it looks like it is true that he's been called to Collision, presumably to do ROH stuff, and then when he's got there, he's been turned away because of these outstanding issues. I think the bigger one that came out today is like the Christopher Daniels one. I was shocked at that one. I suppose that's just life, though, isn't it? People, just because they were friends in 2004 doesn't mean they're still going to be friends to this day, especially in the world of CM Punk. That's the thing. That's the unforgivable thing there. Like, whatever their issue is, and you can see it from both sides. Like, that's the report, that we're getting with Nick Howe's been adding on, with Wade Keller adding on from the Torch. It sounds like what has happened is, well, Ace Steel isn't around the Collision. Therefore, Christopher Daniels, who was around the Brawl Out and was involved, I think in the Punk camp's view, he shouldn't be allowed backstage at a Collision in that case, which is where you get into the tit-to-tat embarrassing stuff. But that's where Tony Khan comes in, doesn't it? That's like,
yes,
if the elite being EVPs as sheriff badges, what's been head of talent relations and not being allowed to go to the second biggest show the company runs every single week because you've got beef with an active wrestler? Why does the active wrestler have the power to dictate that that's going to happen if that's the case? Or why is Tony Khan, if it's not coming from CM Punk, and I'm sure we'll get the, like Dave Meltzer said today, we're going to get the denial like we did with the Cabana stuff. Why is Tony Khan how can your head of talent relations do his job effectively if you're kowtowing to a wrestler he's got beef with and not having him in the building? Like, that sums that up too, doesn't it? That is absolute. That one's unforgivable. It's sad and it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Like, that's a sloppy shop.
It is. It's a completely sloppy shop, and I think everything feels very much like interconnected together here, because you've got, like, there's so many people at fault, but like whether it be obviously CM Punk for just simply who he is, the kind of person that he is, the fact that, isn't some of the reasons that he sent them back apparently to do with the fact that Ace Steel wasn't allowed? But and it's just like, we're still fighting that battle, are we, Phil? Fucking hell! Like, do you want to give that a rest? Like, Jesus Christ!
But that's what. So like today, like Michael Sidgwick, who's one of the lads over at What Culture today, like he's like me, he gets a lot of the same Americans in his replies giving him grief. But he said that today. It was like, at the end, like, does that not just sum AEW up? He was making like a joke about it, being like, well, this isn't a company then that lives what, in a permanent state of uneasy compromise. That's what it feels like it is. Where like, and that you can see that right down to the All In card, because it's like, well, we can't have FTR in the books without giving something back to that crew, because that crew are going to be annoyed that they don't get to work a match with their friends, the Dark Order. So therefore, we've got to give them Jay White. Therefore, that might upset things on Collision with Punk's crew. And it's like that. It's still like that. And we're seeing, I think what we saw today with that Punk promo is all of that stuff is bubbling to the surface, and it's showing the ugly side of things. And when you've got a messy bitch like Punk in the middle of it, like, that this is what it is right now at AEW.
And it doesn't help when you got Kendall Roy in charge of the whole business, isn't it?
Oh, we were watching the video in the pre-show of him dancing, jumping up and down, because that was the big smoking gun in Wade Keller's report today in the exclusive he had on PW Torch, was that when Punk came back, apparently Tony Khan was on headset starting a CM Punk chant, and the rest of the company just kind of looked at him like, what the? Well, wait, there's nothing down for us then. If this is happening, like that clip that somebody posted today is literally, Tony in the middle of a ring bouncing up and down chanting for CM Punk. Like, he couldn't be a bigger CM Punk fanboy. But it's a mess.
The perception at the minute of the company, and this is where we get into the bigger company-wide stuff, and I'm sure it will tie into All In as well about that, is that, and it's the impression that the company, it's the inmates are running the asylum, and effectively it's run by children. And there is degrees of blame to go around to everyone. Punk's blame is kind of necessary. I happen to think it's part of this is him lashing out at what he can see as a culture that has been allowed to kind of persist. And we've seen this now. We've been following this company. I was thinking about this today since day one, even pre day one. We're going to be talking about All In. So that's necessarily like before the genesis that forms ultimately the genesis of the company. And we've watched them where they had a lot of unproven talent and the booking was kind of messy, but it was lively and it was different. And it was people we didn't see on that kind of big stage in there as well. And it's grown in terms of talent, like to quite a ridiculous degree, to the stage where I think at this point it's become quite bloated. And this has happened kind of under his watch. And all of these backstage issues you mentioned about, we can't have this match and we can't have this match. We can only have interactions here. That's directly affecting the TV. That's the thing that's really coming through in this. We are not getting, and this is the problem with AEW. We don't get a sense of finality because we don't get the big matches because some people don't like the finishes in those big matches. What the fuck is going on? That is WCW stuff. That's WCW. That's what that is, where you've seceded all sense of creative control and there isn't a firm hand on the till there at all. And it's grown adults here and it is incredibly fucking childish. And I'm at the point now where I'm kind of like, and you would have got this impression, obviously, because I had a couple of pints when I recorded it on Friday. Well, I'm sober today, but I'm still pissed off at them. Yeah. We've invested, and a lot of wrestling fans have invested a lot of time and energy in this kind of company to be something different. And what we found is that very, very quickly, it's the place where a lot of things might be teased or it could be potentially possible, but it can't happen because they don't want to work with them. And that's no way to run a company. And every booker has had to deal with this. Every promoter has had to deal with this in their companies. Now, the ones who have the firm hand on the till, who you knew Vince McMahon, for all of the evil he is, you knew who was in charge. And what he said happened effectively, as Bret Hart found out in 1997, but like in Montreal.
With exceptions, though. There was Sean, like, you're going to use the Bret example, then surely Sean is Punk. And he had his way with Vince.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like when we go down that road of using Vince
Probably
as a
not.
good example.
But there, it's gone to it. Like, it's actually been happening for a while in AEW. It feels like we've not had certain matches because of these. And this is also spilling into a $1 billion TV deal, which hasn't been signed. They've got, don't get me wrong, I think there's things about, and they say they're going to be being close, but we don't know what the effect of this overall strike is going to have on the revenues for Warner Brothers Discovery. And they decide to cut back as a result of this strike. We don't know this kind of stuff. They might view it as even more valuable because it's content in an era which is kind of strike proof. But the point there is we are not having the storylines that we have wanted. We know what the big money matches are. They're the things that bring everything round. And we're not getting them because of a lot of this stuff. And it's because Tony Khan doesn't have a firm hand on the till. And now people are going out and they're kind of just like taking the piss, frankly, with the stuff they're suggesting. Whereas you should be saying, no, you wrestle them. That's what's going to happen. I run the company. I'm the booker. And there isn't any of this stuff. It doesn't feel like there's organization. I've banged on for ages about infrastructure. That comes onto the writings. There was a good piece by James in Discord today where he was just talking about all of these things that are wrong with the company, where the booking tropes, when they got rid of this ranking system, which I know people didn't really like, but at least it gave some kind of structure. Now we just have battle royals and endless tournaments. And I'm like lazy booking. Like this stuff has been creeping in for a while. And I've sensed this. And All In, which, the backdrop I've got for the video viewers on here is of the attendance they're going to be beating. This is the one that WWE, WrestleMania 32 at the AT&T Stadium outside of Dallas, is the one they claimed got 100,000 for. In fact, just over 80,000. They're going to be overtaking this. And it feels like they're not even remotely ready for this. And if I'm going to, again,
it's next week. It's next week.
Next week.
Same thing. And we're talking about this. Just to rewind on that before we get into All In, we're talking about Punk, who, I'm definitely more sympathetic to his point of view. He should be in a program with Hangman Page. He should be in a program with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, or just Kenny Omega. Like, those things should be happening, you know. And I think there's a lot of things he's saying that are right, you know, about these guys and the way they deal with things.
Do you think the issue with the Bucks, and this is me completely hypothesizing, I was thinking about it, I was like going, why is there the kind of resentment? And there'd be the thing about him wrestling his mates. How much money do you reckon he was making off merchandise in WWE? What do you reckon that is like now with the way the merchandise is organized in AEW? How much of a drop off do you think that is? I reckon he's pissed off. And he looks at them, and it's the perfect example where it's not being run right, but it directly is linked to the EVPs, of whom, by the way, I've got from Indeeds.com, everyone's favorite job hunting website, a definition of what an executive vice president is. This may not be the time to kind of chuck it into the mix on here, but to supervise the employees below their rank and ensure all business activities contribute to company growth. That's not even something that they're interested in doing, because it doesn't feel like there has to be, like with mediation and resolution, a degree of people coming together and having a conversation about it. And they're not. And effectively, we're not getting a mega punk because they're not having the conversation. And let's be honest, if we look about where they are in terms of 5 years, I look at like the Bucks as the most disposable part of the elite from AEW. Like, I really
just gave them like 10 million to stay, you know, whatever the number was.
But why?
So...
like, they have to be press ganged into matches and stuff like that. And that's not, that kind of stuff has been going on for a long time as well within that. And I think these are all the things. And because CM Punk is a prick, you put all these other things under the surface of a company not being run particularly well. And I imagine he views a lot of the wrestlers there going there. I'm not saying CM Punk's motives are all pure of heart and everything else. He wants to make money, but I'm assuming he wants to make money in the way by having the biggest matches that get the biggest pay-per-view buy rates, which end up ensuring he gets bigger deals and everything else. And they're actively not doing that. Why would people pay money for this show other than to have a look at what a full Wembley Stadium is like? And MJF Adam Cole, to be fair. But really, you kind of look at them as a company and you look at the way they're booking and everything else, and it just feels like, nah, they had that reset first time around with the and I felt that was leading towards Cody Rhodes going, which was when effectively Tony Khan took charge of the booking, said we actually just need a firm direction in hand. You've won.
That's what's missing. There is no hot firm that, because this is the thing.
That's the thing. They need they need a cunt, to use that word again, in charge. That's what they need.
I'm not as far gone as you with some of this stuff, because I agree with Punk in a lot of ways. I think his attitude to wrestling, I think, is more what mine would be. Let's all just fucking work together and make some money. Or, you know, when it comes to, like, you know, what the program should be, I imagine, you know, his ideas are probably a bit more serious as far as, like you said, they're drawing money and real programs, and the Bucks and Kenny and that seem to just want to work with the mates. And it you know, I agree with him there. But the problem is that, like, it's the way he goes about it. Like this, again, cutting this Hangman Page promo like it was some kind of solution, or he's going to work his way into a feud, when there's All In to sell next week. Like, that's too important. There's All Out to sell as well, to be honest. We didn't need the news cycle to be concentrating on like these stupid issues again. Like, God help them next week when they're all under one roof again. Yeah, like Matty said there in the chat, with with Dynamite and Collision being taped together, and then they're all going to be at All In. I saw that joke today on Twitter. Maybe the lack of announcements and a clear plan for All Ins, because we're going to see, you know, how the fight goes backstage at All In before we decide, you know, who's actually going to be booked on All Out. It's a fucking, you know, it's a powder keg right now. And the biggest part of it is that, like, whichever side you're on, and I think maybe we're more sympathetic to the Punk point of view than we are like the Bucks and Kenny point of view. But, you know, I do. There's a part of me that kind of thinks, well, this is the way he's going to go about business. I can kind of understand, you know, why a Hangman Page just stays silent. He's the smartest man in all of this. He doesn't get involved in any of it, and he lets Punk embarrass himself, because that's what he's done. You know, today he's pretty much embarrassed himself, and to the point where if CM Punk has to do an apology, that tells you everything. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whose side is right or whatever. It's the overall, and it's the mess that this is allowed to happen. It's the fact that whether you think Punk's right or wrong, he's enabled by the fact that Tony Khan's going to back him over his head of talent relations. Like, that shows somebody who's learned nothing from sitting there next to him All Out last year at the presser, and while Punk was doing his rant. Like, that shows you that nothing's really changed. And this day probably was always coming, and it's a layup for the people who hate Punk, who don't think he's worth it. We love Collision. We love the more serious edge Punk's programs get when we decide which one we're doing. You know, we can see the money on the table as far as shows go, but the people on the other side are probably rubbing their hands together today because he's playing right into their hands, and
yeah,
you know, it feels like we've learnt nothing since Brawl Out, and that's where we are now. Again, the week before their biggest show ever.
And what's the chances of there being another Brawl Out type situation next week? You know, we're not far away. Well, even before then, because they're doing the double taping. I'm sure at some stage they're going to need to go for a piss, and if they're not, haven't got one directly there with them, then you know, if they're not in that kind of locker room, there's a good chance they might, I don't know, meet up and have some water or something like that. They're going to bump into each other, but it's a fucking shit show, mate. And again, yeah, like you say, it's like we're not. The gripes that I would have with like the Elite, in essence, in terms of the job they've done as EVPs, or I say the non-job they've done as EVPs, he just provides them fuel to the fire of just being this very difficult arsehole to kind of work with. However, I'm sure if he was able to, which he isn't, just to kind of say, okay, these are my issues with the way the company's run, there'd probably be some fair points in it, but it always gets lost. Because, like you say, he'll do this. He'll turn the news cycle into something which becomes like the endless psychodrama of Phil Brooks. Which, after a while, even for us clickbait merchants, like we find that like it gets fucking tiresome after a while. It's like, can you just act grown up and actually have the matches so we can talk about this like killer fucking feud that's compelling TV? And it feels for the first time like a lot of this stuff coming to the surface is now directly impacting kind of like what we watch on a weekly basis, how it's put together. And then that's where I get like red flag fire warnings of like, this is stuff that WCW did. Like, and this was meant to be the company that didn't fall into that trap. This was the company where you study the Observer newsletter, and we all studied it. We all knew the faults of what went wrong with WCW, and we wouldn't have done any of those things. And it's just, you look at it and go, well, that was an inmates running the asylum place. This is very much an inmates running the asylum type place, and the amount of kind of leaks and everything else, it's rather than complaining about the leaks, why are these leaks happening? What is the culture and atmosphere backstage? The idea of a tighter ship on Collision has been something that we've always agreed with, and there are ways and means of doing it, getting into people's faces, shouting at them, to people with no kind of leverage as well. So it is bullying. Like what kind of fucking example are you setting fundamentally?
Well, you say clickbait, and you say what we should be talking about, and what we should be talking about on that note is the fact that this company has passed 80,000 tickets out for All In next week. 80,000, like you said, the WrestleMania behind you, and I'm not having this. You see a lot of bollocks peddled about that having 100,000 people there, or even 85,000 people. No, it's getting past this week. Because we're getting to the point now where there are days where 700 tickets or so are getting shipped. Is that because matches are starting to get announced? Is that because the advertising's getting better? Is it just because it's getting closer and people are making firm decisions on whether they're going to go? You know, this is an overwhelming success, you know, as far as numbers go. You know, our friends at Wrestle Tickets are the ones who've been tracking it. You know, 84,000 is the possible setup we've got currently, but I'm sure they could play with that. That's probably why we all haven't had our tickets sent out yet. But like 80,000 has cost 80,709 is the WrestleMania 32 record. So I mean, yeah, they're going to sell another, you know, 700 tickets or so. It's gonna be passed. I mean, that's happening regardless. Like, we should be talking about this gigantic success that's coming up next week from a business point of view, from you know, just the fact that a company other than WWE, like I said before, I was at my mum's today and I was like, oh, I'm going to the wrestling, you know, at Wembley. Oh, the WWF. No, the AEW, it's this other fucking company, you know, and they've somehow done this, you know what I mean? Like, we should be talking about that because that's what's coming up. And it doesn't, I just saw Steph did a tweet about it. Like, doesn't feel at all like it's next week. Like it
No.
doesn't at all. And I get there's a few hours of AEW TV before we get there, and I would push back on that because that's a common thing I've been getting in my tweets since we recorded that video for the weekend show on Friday, where we got a bit angry. Oh, Benno, there's loads of TV left for you to get excited about what's going on. There's X many hours. That's a favorite thing people like to throw out. It's like, well, no, actually, no. Because from our point of view as British people, like Dynamite and Collision, yeah, they're on this week. But with the delays, by the time the pay-per-view happens next week, you might barely get Dynamite in if you were one of the hundreds of thousands of people who watch it on ITV. But Collision won't even air in this country next week. So they really haven't got that amount of time left. Like, really, to get this going, this is almost for the UK. This is kind of our go-home week. And does it feel like it at all, JP?
Nope. Doesn't feel like it in the slightest. I mean, and it ties into my general level of enthusiasm with the card. As I said earlier on, I think I'm actively annoyed about this build because the thing when this show was announced, I'm sorry to bang on to this point again, and I won't labour it as much.
We've slept now. We can talk about it in a reasonable way, hopefully.
Yeah, it was, but the
a
way
little bit of the fume we gave you on Friday
is it was going to be a WrestleMania because guess what? Behind me, that image, this is what a WrestleMania looks like. It's a sold-out, massive stadium show in an iconic venue as well, in Wembley Stadium, a place that you have to be big in order to sell it out. And they're at that stage, like they really are. They're at that fucking point. It's big. I don't even know if the rugby league sold it out this weekend. Challenge Cup, that's popular enough around the country as well. But you look at like where this is going, like SummerSlam '92. While people, what that did is that established WWE in this country as like a cultural force. It was the time when the American wrestling, even though it was on Sky and Sky was a minority channel and it wasn't on ITV like World of Sport wasn't, and WCW afterwards, it was a big fucking deal and people thought it was a big deal and it went into the kind of the zeitgeist. All In had the chance to do that. If it had been on free TV, something that was only as a hodgepodge now, so we're putting it on pay-per-view, which is an enormous disappointment because if it had been on TV and you'd seen it, it's like there's an event going on at Wembley, it's live, and there's going to be 80,000 people there. There'll be people who casually have a look and wonder why does something like this sell out a stadium in this way, and they would have given it a chance. Yeah. And they're not doing that at all. Like there's part of me I'm expecting disappointment. Not only in the card, I'm expecting disappointment if I want to buy a fucking t-shirt. I'm expecting disappointment on perhaps even the entrance ways. Have they got the idea of the scale and the scope of this? And it's not feeling like a WrestleMania. They've treated this like this is any other show, which recently has been, we're going to bullshit the booking effectively to 2 weeks beforehand, and the great wrestlers will bail us out. And that's not good enough because a lot of the times the great wrestlers aren't willing to actually wrestle each other, which goes back to the original problem as we brought up on there. So this is all fucking awful.
Yeah.
And the reason singles matches and stuff are important is if you look at a WrestleMania card, it's meant to be the finality of things, of big stories accumulating together now over 2 days, but even over one. And
WrestleMania,
Wrestle
Kingdom.
Wrestle Kingdom.
Leave WWE out of it. Like Wrestle Kingdom, a big show. Maybe not TripleMania. We'll talk about
Which
that.
Doesn't
later.
draw. It's like nearly it'd be 3 times less as many people probably at Wrestle Kingdom if you imagine it's around 30,000 or so, and this is going to be closer to 90. But
yeah,
there isn't even any sense of that, and it does feel like they viewed it in the we take the money and run, and you go, well, you suffer for that. I'm not saying we're ending up with finger poke of doom, but to remember that was in a big fucking stadium show as well. And you can massively disappoint people, and you're not likely to have people coming back and certainly traveling to it as well. And it's the idea is this is the only time they're never going to be able to run a stadium show in the States, the state they're in and what they're drawing at the moment. I don't think they're ever going to be in that position. Like the way things currently are at the moment, it's hard to see that. But
yeah,
and here they've done it and they've just gone, yeah, fine. It feels like it's just another show to the wrestlers, to be honest, for the most part. It feels like it's just another show. It's incredibly disappointing.
like where I'd push back on what you were saying before. Like I bullish still on it being good, and that's
I
not
think it'd be good on the day, but
that's the thing. And
not
people
long
think
lasting. No legacy.
People think they're beating me in an argument when that comes up. Like the amount of replies I've had, like of people whenever I brought the obvious issues that are here for All In. Anyone with a brain can see the obvious issues. And the two most common replies I get is, "What do you expect? AEW always do this." Well, AEW don't always run Wembley in front of 80,000 people. Like this is special, or at least it should be. The other pushback I keep getting is, yeah, but you know, it'll be a good show on the night. And it's like, yeah, you with the galaxy brain take that the the good wrestlers that work for AEW, guess what? When you put them in matches, they're gonna have good matches. We all know that. The great wrestlers who are gonna have great matches. The the other thing about this that's gonna, you know, on the day is gonna save them is that the presentation, the fact that we're there, there's 80,000 of us there, 80,000 of like what will be an extremely lively crowd. You know, I don't get patriotic for much, and I'm not really in general, but you know, British crowds are fucking good, even down to the promotions we don't like. You know, there's always, you know, the atmosphere is always better over here. Was that Money in the Bank, you know, last month, and it was, you know, it was incredible. Go back to TNA, WCW, whoever's come over here has always been met with a great atmosphere. This is going to be one of the all-time atmospheres at a show. There isn't a chance. Like I agree with the haters on this one, so you can't throw this back at me. There isn't a chance we're going to go there and have a bad time because it's going to be an amazing spectacle. And again, this isn't a defense of Tony Khan, but basically it's hard to fail with this roster of wrestlers. Like within reason, if the wrestlers that are on the show are pretty much on there in any jumbled order. If CM Punk was in a 6-man, you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't, there would still be good matches because these are good wrestlers who are going to give you good matches. But what's getting missed from that is like, we've lost the chance for this to be treated as special, and good matches will give us a good show on the night. But what this could have been was something with stakes, something that was important, something that could have been built to. Because, like, you know, we got hung up a lot on announce the card, announce the card, announce the card. You still see that, and we're, you know, it's next week, and we're still, you know, kind of hearing that, you know, where is the rest of the cards? But it was never even just about that. And I think maybe we got lost in that a little bit because there is merit to that, because it's your biggest show ever, and you probably should get your ducks in a row. And I'm sorry, Americans, no, it isn't an excuse that he always does this, but again, it's your biggest show ever. It probably should have been an exception, but it wasn't even about announcing the card. I think if we knew there was a card, it would have at least shown us that there was a coherent, long-term plan to put together the biggest show AEW have ever done. And we know that that's not what this is. There are no major programs coming to a head. None. Maybe FTR in the books because they managed to heat that up out of nowhere on a few weeks' notice because of, you know, the goodwill that comes with that rivalry. You know, MJF and Cole's going to be chapter 1 of whatever it is. And then there's other nice stuff on the show. They're going to try and heat up Punk and Joe, multi-mans, whatever. But it wasn't ever really about have you announced an exact card 5 weeks out. It was just showing there was a plan and a purpose of putting your main, like, is it, I've said that a million times this weekend, JP, is it too much to ask for your main event top guys to be a main event top guy stuff against each other that's coming to a head here? You've had 6 months to plan it. You haven't had the last couple of weeks to put this together. And the fact that this card has so clearly been mixed around and jumbled back up and reorganized and things split off to All Out in the last couple of weeks shows that it's true that there hasn't been forethought and a long-term plan for their biggest show ever. Instead, and maybe this is, JP, the acceptance stage that I'm at now. Like, we were in the anger stage on Friday, but instead, you know what we're getting? We're getting a nice little afternoon pay-per-view that isn't in prime time in America. That's going to be a nice little pay-per-view that doesn't give away too much that they can save for All Out. That will be a spectacle because the audience are going to provide you that spectacle, and it's going to have some good matches, but it's going to be a nice little afternoon show. And the All Out show that's the week after, it's on pay-per-view in prime time. We need to keep that strong. And in a way, that's almost, you know, it's absolutely, in fact, not even almost, an equal focus, if not more a focus. And that's what's happened, because this show, like we keep saying, JP, it was sold. The reason they sold 80,000 tickets, it was sold as an occasion. It was sold as the biggest wrestling show ever. We as British people understand what it means to be in Wembley Stadium for 80,000 people to go to, and it built itself on that. And that's what the tickets were sold on, and that's not what we're getting now. What we're getting is a nice little pay-per-view that's going to be on a Sunday afternoon in America, and then we're going to be on to All Out the week after, and it's going to be like, oh, wasn't that great, that spectacle? Weren't those UK fans great? And weren't the matches fun? Because they're going to be fun. They're going to be good matches because these are good wrestlers, but it's not going to be the peak of the promotion like it could have been, the peak of a load of rivalries, the thing that you can show for years as far as footage goes. It's none of that. It's not their WrestleMania. It's not their Wrestle Kingdom. It's just another AEW pay-per-view, if not a couple of notches below that.
Yeah, that's where it is. It's not the comedy. Yeah. This feels very much like on parity with Forbidden Door in terms of like how that's
very Forbidden Door in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
The build's generally quite messy. This one they did a better job, but even then, what was it? It was like what looked like backstage video packages of Sonada challenging Jungle Boy or whatever it is. You know, that kind of stuff. And you know, like the reason why we, you know, for example, the appearances, when you see a Kenny Omega singles match, because you don't get that many of them, they should be at special occasions. If this isn't a special occasion, then what is? What is? The biggest crowd you'll ever work in. So a slightly tapered off United Centre, because there's no way it's doing like the proper sellout. There's no way. We're not getting that. You're going to get it like the entranceway moved, you know, moving towards the centre, pushing the ring more over to one side of it. You're still going to have the black tarpaulin and stuff like that around it as well. And that's viewed as more important. And it's like this was their way, it should have been, of saying, we can do what you do. We just actually have better matches in order to be able to do it. Because guess what? We've been collecting the greatest collection of sort of young in-ring talent that you can around the world. Is generally what I'd say that they have. And to be honest, are they using them? Are these, like, I'm not going to trios matches are fun for house shows. They're house show matches, how they feel. Or if you're building towards a series of single matches or with a tag team as well, you use them in the way that New Japan does. But they're very much undercard kind of fodder. Here, this is where the big stars are being positioned. These are the matches that should have been used to build, let's say, Kenny Omega. I mean, even Kenny Omega versus Konosuke Takeshita would have made sense here. But instead of All Out, like, why? Is that going to drive
using WrestleMania to build Backlash?
Using WrestleMania to build Backlash. People have made that
point. That's what this is.
It is, and it's insulting to us because it does feel like, well, they've taken the money and run. You're not getting a 10 million gate in the States. Even with their cut of pay-per-view, they're not going to be getting anywhere close to this at the United Center. So why is that the fucking priority? Like, it's bad. Like, it is. And these things, like, you're not going to have that same level of enthusiasm. They go, yeah, it was fun, but is it going to make new fans? No. Has there been, like, you put some adverts on buses. Why weren't you using ITV as your fucking business partner to say, can we get some of our wrestlers on? Why wasn't that stuff happening? And that
a lot of pieces aren't in place. The fact that it's even a pay-per-view. The fact that, like, and like I say,
it's cheaper, so feels cheaper compared to All Out.
Well, that's the thing, and the fact that, like, it's, you know, that's the other pushback you get a lot. Well, they got to worry about All Out Classic. No, they booked that. That's their fault. That's their mistake. That even cheapens it. I mean, when that got announced, we were worried because we've been worried this whole time. People are watching this or listening to this from around the world. Don't you understand what it is to be a British wrestling fan? You know, maybe we're all miserable because we spent most of our teenage years and, in our case, our adult lives, or especially for me, watching wrestling at 3 a.m. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why we have higher standards. Maybe it's because we've been promised since SummerSlam '92. You know, WCW treated the country kind of like shit. You know, I went to one of the worst shows I've ever been to when they came over, you know, still, you know, 2000 past their peak in America, but, you know, there's still an arena full of British fans that got treated to some absolute slot when the Harris boys main evented that show that I went to there, which is just like, well, versus the Mamelukes, it was unacceptable. And they shit the bed, and WWE put off coming back here for years. And then they did Clash at the Castle, which was cool, but, you know, not quite SummerSlam '92. That was kind of non-canon, kind of Saudi show, to be honest. That's what it felt like. And then we Money in the Bank this year, you know, I think that was closer.
It was canon. At least it was canon. I'm not even sure this feels like canon for the most part, but
we're all bitter as well over like those years, go back to Battle Royal at the Albert Hall, go back to the UK only pay-per-views. Like I was talking to Steph about it today. Like, we both remember being like kids to teenagers watching like, these, there's a big pay-per-view on it to do the pay-per-view, and you get it on Sky Box Office, and then you watch it, and it's like, why is X-Pac team with Stone Cold Steve Austin? Oh, it's gonna be fallout for this on Monday Night Raw when I watch it next week now, because it didn't count, it was non-canon. We've had a lot of that.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is a real one. This is gonna be no, it's AEW coming over, and it's AEW giving us their biggest show ever, and we're all going to turn up for it. We're going to do our part. The 80,000 of us are going to do their part. Dare I say it? The wrestlers are going to do their part as well. But that doesn't mean Tony Khan has done his part as far as the booking goes. Like you said about what James, you said, you was absolutely spot on with that. It's exposed the weaknesses that Tony Khan as a booker. It's not an excuse that he always does this, because again, this was more important than your regular pay-per-views, but he has dropped the ball. And it's absolutely something worthy of critique. Maybe at the point of acceptance where I'm just like, I'm going to go. It's going to be a nice little, afternoon show in America, evening show for us. We're all going to have a good time. And then that's going to be it. But the reason it's not more than that is Tony Khan. That is the element. That's the link in the chain that's broken here, because everything else was in place for this. And that absolutely massively deserves critique, and the types of critique people like me and you and others are giving it. That's why we feel so passionately about it.
Is that part of the problem now? Is he's isolated himself from critique? Because if somebody can explain to me what a wrestle joy is, but those kind of people do not fucking help the situation with the absolute.
It's a dream match, that 6-man. Dream match, that, because I've been dreaming for Takeshita to team up with Juice Robinson for like pretty much my entire childhood, mate. That was what I want. Fuck off. Nonsense.
Like, I just see that, and I just think you're actively kind of part of the problem, because they're part of the press conferences, which give an idea, I think, a false idea of this is what the wrestling media thinks about it. And I'm not saying the wrestling media are the people you should necessarily go to, but you ignore the criticisms at your peril. Like that's how I feel about this, and that's something that has been kind of ignored. And guess what? Chickens come home to roost after a while if you don't do this. And it's been happening. It's been on the way.
Don't be another one.
No.
Don't be another one of these shows, JP.
This is going to be the biggest attended show they ever do in their history. They are never, ever going to beat this again. And we're saying that in year 5. And it could potentially become $1 billion company. That won't make a difference. They won't. I don't think they, because they've kind of had that chance. They really have. And, they've not delivered on what we've kind of expected, really, because the British audience has shown an incredible amount of tolerance in terms of come over. Like, they've been badgered about when they're going to come over, and it's been sort of touted about for a long time. And now it feels like you get stars, but what are you seeing them in? Nothing. We were talking about Sting career match. That seems laughable now, that would ever be a thing there, that we could possibly get a Sting retirement match into all of this. Nah, not at all. Not even like Orange Cassidy, who you would argue in terms of that international title reign, him and John Moxley. I don't think we're getting that. We're just going to get similarly. Nah, it would require a plan. But it's why is that plan in place? Where is this infrastructure? Like, you can't just hire one kind of bloke to come in and hope that they're going to end up fixing it as well. And you can't keep on avoiding the confrontation that's going on there. You need to get in there properly, and you need some arseholes. You need some people who go, actually, one of the big things they've never done is they need to trim that roster down. Because I think that doesn't help the situation. There's far too many fucking toys for him to play with. And that's his problem. He loves collecting toys. Doing anything with them is just but that's kind of worse. Because you're always thinking, well, there are better matches. We're just never seeing them because this guy doesn't like this guy, and so on and so forth. But yeah.
It's been a Tony Khan trope from the start.
It has been.
The big main eventers don't wrestle each other because someone would have to lose.
4-way women's matches, apparently. That's a big Tony Khan trope, of course.
Well, on that note, do you want to run through the card quickly before we move on to very brief thoughts on Collision and that? So, this is what we've got to... So we don't have to be all negative. There are positives here. Because, again, I've had this discussion with a million people this week, and come at me in me Twitter. I'll reply to it. I'll drive Steph mad at 4 a.m, replying to knobheads on Twitter. I've got the time. But, I even agree with, because people will come back at us and go, well, you wanted big, built-up singles matches with main eventers with stakes. apparently that's too much to ask, but whatever. But the pushback will be, well, hang on. You get an MJF versus Adam Cole. You get an FTR versus the Young Bucks. You know, even the Darby and Sting and Swerve and AR Fox thing, I've had that thrown at me is like, well, there you go. There's your blood feud. You're getting a bit of everything you want there. And I'd agree to a point. I think, you know, if you go from the top there, MJF versus Adam Cole, that is a well-built, important match on this show. I would argue if they're not doing a turn, which it feels late now, I don't think they are. I think if we get a turn, it's going to be on the pre-show, which again is another matter. The fact that they're working the pre-show, we're going to waste that pop. But like, I think that's an argument in the favor of the people who don't agree with us. Like, that is a important match on AEW TV that hasn't been held back for All Out. It's the first match probably of a few in a rivalry. It's not exactly coming to a head here, but that is a genuinely big match. Would you argue? I think maybe the thinking's been it's babyface versus babyface. It's like Bulldog versus Brett. You know, there's that. That's there. I would argue you probably, if you're going to do that, and it's a very weird and different way to get to a big world title match, and I actually respect it in a few ways. The problem is you don't have a heavy duty other singles match that's on the card that can make can kind of justify the fact that you can get away with it. You know what I mean? It's not like elsewhere on the card, Hangman Page is facing CM Punk, or John Moxley is facing Kenny Omega, or Chris Jericho is facing CM Punk, whatever your combination of the tippy top guys are. I agree with the people who say that's an argument, because that is an argument of a built up, important match that's been a big part of the TV for a while. It's just, there are those caveats to it.
There are. But then when you look at this card, in terms of what's announced, you asked me like so far we've got 4 matches announced for it. We've got MJF defending the AEW title against Adam Cole. We've got, or I should say 5, including the 0 hour. We've got FTR defending the tag team titles against the Young Bucks. Both, and trust me, I'm not mad on the Adam Cole MJF one, but at this stage, like I say, I'm in acceptance mode, kind of like you on that. I'm like, okay, fine, but I get the reasons for it being there. Like, regards my own personal tastes, because that's what it comes down to.
Well, FTR and Young Bucks, like, I mean, let's do them match by match. Like, if you haven't, I mean, I think that's a big match. It is.
Yeah, but that's the kind of match that should have been on it. But it's what it should have been one of several matches.
It should have always been the plan. And people, again, that's another bit of kickback I've had. Well, you can't criticize the fact that they had, you know, the righteous versus the elite planned. It's not happening anymore. No, I can absolutely criticize that was the plan up until somebody finally saw sense, and we had to change it last minute. And that's why this match, you know, we're getting these matches last minute. That's why the bookings had to change, because you wasted however amount of time. Hangman Page took a pin to Evil Uno at one point on TV because they thought they were building to that match, clearly. Like, it should never have been the original plan. But the replacement is good. FTR versus Young Bucks. Is that not what we're asking for, JP? No. A big, well-built match with, you know, maybe well-built, quote unquote, with, you know, 2 of the biggest stars, 2 big tag team stars. No bigger tag team match they could deliver.
I would argue it's not necessarily well-built, but it's been built because there's a rubber match. There's a simple storyline for that. In the same way there could have been for a lot of singles matches. You could have had, for example, Kenny Omega going, I want to have a great match with Hangman Page at the show. So we're going to have that. Or Kota Ibushi, for those people who seem to love the infantilization of a 40-year-old man who's telling, you know, them to have their match there. It's like, okay, at least there's a reason for it. But singles matches are what we gravitate to. Singles matches, tag team matches, because the way divisions, I can't believe I'm explaining this in 2023. The whole point of wrestling ultimately is to win the world title. That's the thing at the center of it. It's the chase. And there's only meant to be one of fucking those, even though we've got 2 at the minute on TV, which I've got an issue with. So you should be trying to get it down to 1, because you chase that. That's your singular focus, is to kind of win those. So so by putting in the multi-man stuff, it just ends up confusing the situation. But you mentioned, like, there with FTR and the Young Bucks and MJF and Adam Cole, it's like they're 2 things, but we should have had another 6, because then we get into the women's match, which I'm sure originally it would have been Jamie Hayter, but Jamie Hayter's been rumored not to be on this card for a while now.
Yeah, we've known this for a while.
We've known this is not news that's just happened. If it's just broken, I get it. Much in the same with CM Punk, Samoa Joe. I would have got it if it was just somebody, there was an injury and we just have to fix it, and this is an easy fix. So instead here, we've got Hikaru Shida, who has to win a match in order to get into her being able to defend the title. Toni Storm, who is kind of debuting an entirely new character. So that's like a different dynamic to it. and it's likely to be Britt Baker and Saraya because they've been given kind of layups in the other ones there. That is the epitome of I'm just going to chuck 4 women on the card because I'm not going to put more than one women's match on this card because I've got no really other storylines because let's face it, you can't book women. Never has really been able to. That's where there's been times when it's gone like kind of well, but I'm wondering how much more of that in luck rather than judgment.
It's a weird one, this, because like I've said to you before, I think this is again another argument people will push back with, because I agree on MJF Cole. I think FTR Bucks is a good match for this show, and deserving of this stage, and it deserves credit for it. Like, you know, this isn't black and white. There are counters to like some of the points we're making. They're two strong enough counters. This one, like, it's a weird one because they have built it, but have they really? You know, because it dominated the women's division and it was fucking terrible. Like, if you're going to use it as a good example of AEW's booking, you know, the stuff with the green spray paint that happened every week on Dynamite for months on end and all of that. Like, I think it felt like that happened. Then it went cold. Then they've panicked. Then they've gone, oh, by the way, Tony's actually got written on his notepad that there was going to be a 4-way women's match coming out of that. Okay, so how do we get back to it? I know, tournament. And now we're back to it now. Yeah. I don't think that's a coherent, well-done build. I think that's something clearly changed, the injury, I think. But I think more than that, it clearly was forgotten for a few weeks. And it's clearly being pulled back now. And we're going to lean on the lore and the stuff that we did previously. We're going to get to the right place. And I would argue that's the right 4 women. It's your biggest 4 stars in the women's division. I think that's... Maybe we're more 50-50 on that. If I'm giving a thumbs up to MJF and Cole and FTR and Young Bucks, I'm more thumbs in the middle leaning up on this. I reckon you might be thumbs in the middle leaning down. But I think your biggest show ever should probably have your biggest women's stars on it, and that's kind of what this is. And it's got a British star in there, and it's got Tony Storm in there, who's spent a lot of time here too. Like, it ticks a few boxes, that one. I think I might be leaning thumbs up on that one.
I think the Jamie Hayter injury has just sort of screwed it up. I just hate multi-person matches. It it feels very lazy. It feels like a very cheap way of getting a title off. It feels like something that's just going to be kind of effectively storyline driven. If it was an elimination match, I always think they're a lot more interesting because at least you get down to a final 2 because that's where the fucking drama lies. That's, you know, it doesn't happen when there's like 1,000,001 things necessarily going on in the ring because we see that shit most weeks of the year. But yeah, I'm leaning more towards thumbs down in that regard. And the other one that's announced for the main show is the coffin match with Sting and Darby Allin versus Swerve Strickland and AR Fox.
Fun little match on the undercard.
Yeah. I mean, AR Fox is fucking lucked out big time. And you want to get Sting on there. I can't help but feel you could do something better with Sting, really. And even something better with Darby Allin, who's like, there's this happening, but there's also the Luchasaurus stuff happening as well on the side towards All Out. And that's where I think you kind of get like the kind of weird little aspects to that. Yeah, it's a fun little undercard match, but then if it were me, this wouldn't really have fun little undercard matches. If I was structuring this, the pre-show would be a battle royal where you get all the people who give them all entrances, give them all pops, have it last effectively like the guts of the hour for it to be there, because there'll be plenty for people to kind of pop to as well. And you can have all the various entrances and the rest, and people get to sing along and do that kind of stuff. Instead, what we've got is on the 0 hour, we've got like a very weird MJF, Adam Cole, well, the real title belts, the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles going against Aussie Open, where
out of nowhere
it looks like this is something which you think this is like Russo booking. This is different. It's not been done before. And you go, yeah, there's a reason. There's a reason why when you sit back logically and you think out of it, it's like you're meant to be like preserving that moment when they come out for the first time in the UK as being this kind of big deal. But it's like, oh, but fans like the entrance of those two together. It's like, well, but they also like the idea of them wrestling in this main event. It's like you're wanting your cake and eating it here. So you muddle it, and you're not going to dilute the pops for later on, because guess what? You've already seen them, and you're not going to get that kind of sustained massive reaction second time around. It's not going to feel as special, regardless of what you can do. You can try and convince us afterwards that and I'm sure actually that match will be good, but it's
going to get people in there for the pre-show, so at least that. But,
I mean, we can
kind of covered that with the MJF Cole thing. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of the draw for some people. And I think people are, again, this crowd's going to be amazing, and this crowd's going to love it when they do the double clothesline. If that happens,
Yeah.
there's a positive box. Okay, let's go to the rumored stuff then. I mean, you pretty much nail on guarantee CM Punk versus Samoa Joe, unless he decides to go and feud with someone else. Thumbs up or thumbs down on this one? I shocked people last week. I was thumbs in the middle. I'm still thumbs in the middle. I think it's it's dawned on me the lack of TV time we've got to get this going, and that's not because I don't want to see personally Punk and Joe wrestle. It's because I said last week I want to be consistent about, is this the biggest program Punk could be in? Obviously no. Is this a program that they've clearly been thinking about? Obviously no. Like, that's something I've sat on over the last week or so. Like, you can't tell me that they did the Owen Hart tournament and had CM Punk beat Samoa Joe for the first time ever in a throwaway tournament match on a random collision, for literally not address the feud again for 3 or 4 weeks, and then randomly heat it up again. Like, clearly, if you had a plan, and that plan was Samoa Joe versus CM Punk, you wouldn't have done that match on TV. You would have saved their first match in 19 years for this pay-per-view. You wouldn't have the baby face, or at least he is at the minute, win by a roll-up to allow what? What's the story of this match now? The heel wants his revenge. Like, is that a prestigious big time CM Punk match? Of course it's not. They're warming it up slowly, but they've started from an ice cold place based on that Owen Hart booking. The fact that the feud was forgotten about and Punk's focus has been on Ricky Starks. Poor Ricky Starks on fucking Collisions trying to explain he's suspended. He won't be at All In and All Out, which got booed, by the way, because everyone knew that. Was like, what? Hang on, aren't you Punk's main feud? Okay, you're not going to be involved in either pay-per-view. Cool. And now they're trying to heat this Joe thing up. And God bless him. Joe's doing great work. His promo was incredible on Collision this week.
Yeah.
I like the chokeout thing with Punk in the main event. Just wish the camera might have caught it a bit. That might have helped. So
2 weeks in a row. Well, between Dynamite as well and this.
2 years in a row, I'd probably say, mate.
Yeah.
Fucking 2 months in a row on Collision. But like, I think on that one, I was thumbs in the middle last week. I'm thumbs in the middle leading up. But it's still thumbs in the middle, because obviously, if this was your plan, if you wanted the big CM Punk match at your biggest show ever, and it was going to be Samoa Joe, you would have done this entirely differently. So the people who try and spit this one back as some kind of great long-term storytelling and a match with a great story, no, it's a disservice to the story, to be honest. It's a disservice to the history of this match that these two are going to have to try and heat this up and have what is presumably the second match of a trilogy at Wembley. Not the third match, not even the first match, just this middle match is happening there that they've now got one more week to heat up for UK audiences.
I feel, there's for me, it's an all-out match rather than an all-in match. I said that at the time, and there's nothing that's really kind of dissuaded me from this. I think all-out, it'd be a kind of cracking match to like have on there. But the fact that he's only just beaten him on Collision does take away a lot from it. It doesn't feel special.
Because it's not like that match was 5 stars. It was a nice little match that I enjoyed, but it was a nice little match, and I was like, "Oh, that'll be Phil now, Joe and Punk."
Yep, and that's kind of how I thought as a TV feud, like I say, all out. If you're rushing in shows, even Arthur Ashe, I'd be like, "Nah, that's kind of a good match to put on there because they'll get the reactions, and you've got time with Joe, particularly like an Arthur Ashe, that kind of stuff could work." But no, they've not done that. At least it's a singles match. I'll say that, because. I mean, I look at the other rumored match for it as well, where we've got apparently it's going to be Kenny Omega, Adam Page, and Kota Ibushi versus Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita, building to Omega.
YouTube.com/c/grapple if you want to hear a rant about that one.
Oh.
Are you sure, mate? Though, is that not? Because surely this is the biggest show ever. So Hangman Page is going to no, he's not.
No,
Hangman Page has disappeared again. Like, I know we know the story now about what happened at Collision, but like, don't you think he should have been on TV a bit more prominently since Blood and Guts? Or shouldn't he be in the middle of a big feud here? No, he's going to be added to this Kenny Omega Law Dream match, where apparently it's a big deal that we get to see him.
It's never been mentioned on their telly. We've done a Golden Lovers reunion. They teamed together at Blood and Guts at the end of July. For fuck's sakes, this isn't special. It really isn't. You can be a fan of all of the wrestlers in this match and still agree that this is perhaps the laziest use of all of them. Because, God, the things I've seen people jump through, which is just basically comes to an argument of, I want Golden Lovers and I want Omega Hangman. It's like, well, you could have those as singles matches, and they would at least have some degree of meaning. Kenny Omega says, "I want to have the best match, and I want to do it against my longest term, like my long friend and rival in Kota Ibushi." And I'm sure you could do that, but here it's a way of getting them out there. But what substance, like, really is this? Because
when you leave it to the last minute, you can't have substance. When you shuffle things around at the last minute because you're running a sloppy shop, you know, like the comment there, Hangman Page v Jay White, that would have been a nice match for this. Two guys who are getting a push at the minute, having a match where they finally meet together one-on-one in the ring at All In. But you would have to start at that 6 weeks ago, at least 8 weeks ago. Planning should have started 10 weeks ago. It's not there, is it? So you're having to do this. Just, throw a load of pieces together.
They've dawdled with this stuff. They really have. And then it feels like we're going to have, like, there's like, in terms of, what is it, Blackpool Combat Club versus bloody Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, and who else is the other one in there?
We don't know.
We don't
Possibly
know.
Pac, but we think he's injured.
I thought he's injured for that, maybe. But even then, that's just another trios match. This is like when, I think it was like Brandon from New Jersey said this. This is the idea of putting together, like, this is Dynamite stuff. This is what you do in the build up to the big show. Is you have these 6 man to promote the various 3 singles matches there. So yeah, it's like the laziest way of getting people out there. And this is where I go to the kind of wrestlers and the EVP stuff. Why isn't Omega petitioning for a singles match? He's never going to work a bigger crowd. I've heard people use the argument always saving himself for the singles match at All Out. And I'm like, what the fuck? Have it here. Have the trios match at All Out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, am I fucking going berserk? Is 80,000 a smaller number than 8? And no one's fucking told me about this. Like, it's insane. The gate is 10 times what that is going to be. Even with pay-per-view buys, it's not going to come anywhere close to the revenue.
Screw that, innit? You forget that the gate and the number of people in the audience is going to rival the pay-per-view buys.
Yeah. It is mad. Like, you're sitting there going, like, am I going mental for this? Yeah. Like, where are the stakes for this? Where's, like, and again, you could say, like, build. There are things you could, if you wanted to chuck some of these matches together as just sort of one-off, we've got these 2 great wrestlers, we're going to have a match on the card. Eddie Kingston, John Moxley. You don't need to do
Kingston, Moxley, yeah. That's your one.
You've got fucking you've got, like, heat there. I think a Stadium Stampede match is a kind of an obvious thing to do. But that would be the one multi-person match I'd be having on this card if I was fantasy booking. And you'd have built, there would at least be a reason for it. And that's not, we don't have any reason. I'm sure we'll get a Face of the Revolution ladder match chucked into it. Why do we need to have a match with 6 other people? We will do. And these,
what we're probably getting, this tells us the state of things, and we'll move on after this. But, like, the things that wraps this card up, if it does get announced, remember how negative we were when we heard the rumor that Chris Jericho might be facing Will Ospreay at All In. I don't know if I necessarily want to see it, but if that gets added, this is where we are now. This is how low our standards are.
Yeah.
At least it's a big time match between 2 stars. I mean, definitely Jericho, Ospreay. Again, we've been 50-50 on in the AEW universe or whatever. I don't mean it like WWE universe. I just mean like the world of AEW. But that'll be something that they add that on. Like, at this point, like, you know, again, there should be another 4 of them. Again, it should be a better stylistic match. Again, I don't really want to see Jericho in the spot, but they probably need that now because, like, at least it's been built up, I suppose, with the Don Callis stuff. How sad's that?
Even then, there's a lot of heavy lifting to do on the built-up bit. It feels like it's important because it's 2 high-profile singles wrestlers wrestling each other who haven't before. So in that sense, like, it ticks the box. I am not happy. Like, I don't like that. But do you know what? It is that point we're at the stage of acceptance. Well, I don't know if that's a show title as well. Good little show. Oh yeah, but where does that go afterwards as well? Like, where is that? And I know I could get to a certain degree. There's the idea of having Ospreay Omega at the Tokyo Dome, but I don't think we're going in that direction. I think we're getting Okada Ospreay at the Tokyo Dome. So if we're not getting that, like, are you waiting for, like, the middle of next year? I'm not sure Ospreay will be there beyond January.
You've still got time. Tony Khan still has time to make that match.
Yeah.
Because Ospreay could do something. Jericho's been building stuff with Don Callis. You could change course now. Like, this is one occasion where you could change course and it could make sense. And you could do something with Takeshita and Jericho, whatever. I don't care. You could absolutely do Omega Ospreay still. Like, there is time to pull that back. Not gonna happen though, is it?
No, I just don't think it's going to happen, and it's depressing. It really is. Like it's depressing because this could have been so much more than what it is. Instead, like you said, it's a nice little afternoon.
There we go. 80,000 people all having a nice little afternoon. On that note, anything else on Collision? I think we kind of covered it there in the previous.
I think we did.
Nice little show.
Too long that main event. Too long.
Good bit. Oh yeah, I thought that was the first time watching a Collision, and I'm a fully signed up card carrying Collider where I watched it live. I had a fun time. You know, there wasn't anything really, heavy duty in there. Really good Samoa Joe promo in there that I liked. Fantastic Ricky Starks promo at the start of the show.
Oh yeah.
Wish it was leading to now. Actually, taught me into. Oh yeah, maybe even Punk wouldn't have been so bad for All Out. Not All In, but All Out. Nope. But like, yeah, got an hour and a half in, and like me of all people, I was like, I saw like they all started making their entrances. It was probably like 2:25 It wasn't even 2:30. And I was just like, you know what? I get it. I understand how they do these collisions and we have the main event, but this one felt like this was the jump the shark moment. I was like, it's for the trios titles as well. I don't care about the trios title. I know Joe's going to come out. I'll watch that angle tomorrow. That's cool. I'm glad they're doing that. Again, it heats it up slightly, at least the Punk stuff. But I was like, yeah, I'll wait. And I watched it the next day, and it was a nice little match. But it felt like that collision formula of Punk and friends getting their half-an-hour main event. I think you kind of need the show to be a little bit more, I don't know, dynamic and exciting to get away with that. And this felt a bit good, but paint by numbers. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like I had no urgency to watch it.
And there wasn't like there was a show-long storyline necessarily with it. I mean, you had the Joe stuff, which that's basically what I skipped to because I thought I don't necessarily need to see it. I just thought trios matches shouldn't be lasting that long anyway. They should have a degree of pace to them, and we've seen this kind of similar match. At least it was like a proper tag team match with Jay White and Juice Robinson. At least there were like reasons for something like Ricky Starks, CM Punk last week. It's for the real world championship, so you can have that in there as well. But like, my God, like, yeah,
it wasn't bad. It was just a nice little show. It wasn't
nice little show. Hobbs Miro is an interesting direction if you get rid of QT Marshall, more of which we'll get into, well, very, very briefly near the end.
Problem in it. We can't have our big lads slap and meet, whatever the fucking phrase is. We can't just have that. It's simple, isn't it? Miro and Hobbs are going to beat each other up. No, there has to be QT Marshall and the face heel dynamics in that. Like, who's the face? Like, I'm not even sure. Are we supposed to be sympathetic to Hobbs when it seems like QT Marshall's doing his bidding for him? We're supposed to cheer Miro. Don't think the crowd knew. Yeah, a messy way to get to a match I want to see, to be honest. Even if it isn't an all-out match. Question there from Jake and because Jim Ross involved on Collision there. They asked this on the Discord as well. Didn't mean to get to it. Is Jim Ross tarnished his legacy and a reputation as the greatest announcer of all time, or is he even the greatest wrestling announcer of all time in your eyes? See, the reason I didn't answer this on the Discord was, for me, like, I'm not the guy to answer because I haven't liked Jim Ross since like 2000 when he couldn't tell which one was Edge and which one was Christian, which one was Jeff, which one was Matt. He was getting moves wrong. Like, I feel like he's been doing it for years. Never liked him. But maybe he's the best of all time by default because he was so good in his day. You know what I mean? And no one else has really come along. But yeah, him just being around at this point, they can wheel him out for these main events and he can have a good time, like on last week's Collision, and be made up that he's in the same building as Ricky Steamboat. But I think his use case is long past, hasn't it? And then his contract's up in October. Move him on to something else.
There was one role for him, which weirdly we've kind of alluded to, that he would have been good at if he's in if he's in the right frame of mind to do it properly. It's probably the nice way of saying it, which would have been as head of talent relations, as someone who's been there and had to deal with massive egos at a very important time in WWE's history when there would have been enormous egos around the place. They so greatly need a figure like that, and I don't think he's in the position to be able to do it, and I don't think he's relevant. The problem is that wrestling seems to have very much passed him by.
Definitely. Jim Ross and Kevin Kelly. Like, oh, Kevin Kelly's coming back, isn't he? Ugh, more on that in a minute. I wish Rick Bonnie was staying and I wish Nigel McGuinness was the one fucking off. How about we do that? That'd be great. But that's kind of all there is to say on Collision, really. Nice little show. Wasn't huge developments going towards the biggest show of all time. But like I say, we did get the Punk and Joe stuff. And then, yeah, we got Dynamite this week, which they set up. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Deathmatch. Always knew that day was coming. Jeff Jarrett versus Jeff Hardy. On this week's Dynamite, Orange Cassidy v Wheeler Yuta for remember the international title. Tony Khan doesn't. Britt Baker v the Bunny in the qualifying match that we all presume Britt Baker's going to win. Imagine if it's the Bunny. Darby Allin and Nick Wavy, the Gates of Agony. The Acclaimed are on the show. Jericho's giving Don Callis' answer. We're getting the Kenny Omega sit down with Jim Ross, which I believe has already been recorded. So let's re-record that and just change what we're doing. MJF.
They have been good in the past, in fairness. That's
yeah,
not been the best use of
Jim
Ross. Yeah.
To the question, that's a good use of Jim Ross. And the Young Bucks versus the Guns, which again is it's Young Bucks and tag matches. Feels a bit random that all of a sudden they're a tag team again, but whatever. We've got a big match to sell, so let's go. It's where they should be, so I think that works.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I just want to. What they should be doing is repeating the phrase "all in" on a fucking loop to the end of it, and you're. It's more that you're hoping for some Hail Mary. Kenny Omega says, "Do you know what? I want to challenge such and such." Like she says, "Oh, I'm going to challenge CM Punk." Samoa Joe gets pissed off on Collision. Is forced to stay away. Possibly even gets involved. Or there's me fantasy fucking booking something that'd be immediate. And then immediately my mood would change because it feels like, oh, I'm getting something that people would actually genuinely want to see. Because let's face it, like that's what this card should have been one that American fans should have been looking at going, I'd really want to fucking be there. I want to be there to see this. And they're all probably laughing, going, fuck that. Another trip to Chicago it is.
Well, they're not coming over for that, mate. Maybe they'll come over for our next subject, which is Royal Quest. As we move over to New Japan stuff, obviously got the G1 finals to talk about from this weekend. If you think the positivity train has been great so far, we're going to get rolling in a minute. Can't wait. To be fair, there was a couple of great matches to talk about there. But we do have news that, Royal Quest 3 is going to be at the Coppperbox, which I had to be reminded there was a second one, a Crystal Palace. I'd forgotten about that two-night one. I don't think I ever got around to seeing that. It didn't feel like that. Felt, from the people I knew that went, I think House Show was kind of how that was described. But yeah, we're going to get New Japan back at the Coppperbox, which is coincidentally where Rev Pro are going to be running just next week. So yeah, that's the announcement. October the 14th. It's going to be as is there on the New Japan website. Yeah, what do you make of that, JP? To feel felt a bit odd. I was surprised it got announced before Rev Pro had the chance to do their show at the Coppperbox. Although at the same time, it's very much Rev Pro produce these New Japan shows in the UK, or very heavily in partnership with Rev Pro. And I guess I did see a bit of that as well, the way some people are like, fuck, another one. I'm gonna have to save up, So you do want to give people some notice as well. It's probably the counter to maybe not wait until next Sunday to announce it. But what do you reckon of is this eating the Rev Pro Coppperbox shows lunch? Is it a must see at this point with New Japan in 2023? Reaction to it's been a bit mixed from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I'll probably stand in the mixed camp. I don't think it's going to have the impact necessarily on Rev Pro because I think there's enough distance between the two shows. I think the timing is interesting because it'll be in that period. If you think of it, the way New Japan kind of works, October's like the cutoff point where we know a lot of the dome, apart from tag matches and the junior tag matches because they have their tournaments at the end of the year. So effectively, a lot of the lads kind of get an easier like November, December while those things are going on. So it's it's going to be interesting what we're going to get match wise, and how big are they going to take it necessarily? I think it's not going to do the numbers it did last. I mean, I loved the first one, and it was like a perfect venue for them if they had got the streaming right, which they didn't do, and that was a big part of it. But I loved it. So will I be going to this? Yeah, because I like the Coppperbox as a venue. I don't think it's going to do the 6,500 or so that it did last time. I just can't see that being the case because New Japan as a product just generally doesn't seem to be as hot. And where does this fall into the canon of New Japan? Like, really, is this going to be something that they view as important? Are they going to be pitching like? Are people going to be challenging people for Royal Quest, for example? Because I was going to say this is where you'd give Zack Sabre Jr. a world title shot, wouldn't you, or something like that? To kind like that, that would be a more interesting. But it's going to probably be against Sonada, which is going to be the thing where my heart slightly sinks about that, of just the inevitability. I'm gonna have to sit through 25 odd minutes before we get to see Sonada win, and it's just gonna go, oh,
feel like we
right.
got punished with that. We had a lot of fucking Lij, didn't we? It became like the Lij territory with the amount of times those lads felt like they were over.
Still is the Lij territory, mate.
Oh god, has to be one, doesn't there? But yeah, I mean, it just feels like a lot this year, you know. Like when I first heard kind of rumblings that this might be coming, it was like, oof, bloody hell, another one. Like, so we're all gonna go to All In. We're all gonna go to obviously Red Pro at the Coppperbox the night before. There's a couple more announcements for that we can mention in a sec. We're gonna be doing that. Some of us might even be at Impact. I'm actually considering going to Coventry, JP. We'll see.
I am.
Considering even Tag League this year to see some maybe European wrestling is back. I don't know, but I kind of want to see Nick Gage in Germany. I think the idea of that is quite hilarious. But there's also this now, which is also October the 14th. So yeah, bit of a decision to be made there. But yeah, there you go, New Japan at the Coppperbox. I think it's going to depend what it is, like what gets announced. You know, the first one felt extremely important, was on Fight TV, it was a pay-per-view. You know, I was devastated I wasn't there in the end, but, you know, great pay-per-view, worthy matches there. Let's hope this is more like that. I think that's what it's probably going to need to be to pull off.
Yeah, they can't. My fear is they half-arse a lot of stuff, don't they? And they've got enough people around the place to have some relatively substantial matches in there as well. As Karen mentions there in the chat, they better have a good reason to explain Ospreay's new UK championship. I think that's like, because we've had that whole kind of
UK show was coming up, therefore Ospreay's title is now the UK title. I think that's the extent of what we're getting, unfortunately. Good to see Karen in the chat. But yeah, Naito's been announced for the show, so like you say, so at least there's that. I was going to say quickly on that note, speaking of Coppperbox, obviously, Rev Pro, Subculture versus Velocities officially announced today for their show. JJ Gale, Vegeta, Mickey James looks like it's going to be a three-way now with her on the show. Like that's at least the way the booking kind of looks there. They're still setting stuff up. They've still got big shows coming up, obviously, at Portsmouth this weekend as well to set more up. A small battle of Ospreay Shingo on that show. Luke Jacobs Ishii. Still think they're going to have the matches of the weekend. Red Pro really there, but yeah, that's there you go. That's added to that too.
Yeah, it is, and like Elite, they've had that card ready for a while. They've had the guts of that card ready for a while. You kind of thought of the directions of where they're going to be, of where they're going to be going, and what I'm actually quite impressed with on the Coppperbox lineup is the amount of young Rev Pro talent who are being featured on this. That's one of the things you'd have to say is actually there's quite a bit of them on there. Now it's not going to be the main event. It's going to be Ospreay Shingo for fair reasons. Like I kind of get that. But that's not like Oku, Trent Seven for me doesn't have his interest, particularly with the unit Levi Muir around the place, I'm sure. And the Enfield Strong faction, I imagine it's going to be end up being formed as a result of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny that Rev Pro show. Like, I'm sure we'll get into it more in the preview next week. But I do feel there's mixed feelings on it because I personally, I'm like, well, Shingo Ospreay and Luke Jacobs Ishii on that show. That's kind of enough for me. I think people were maybe expecting a little more. I think maybe this Coppperbox show being announced makes people think, oh, am I going to see the proper, because that was the thing, a big Rev Pro show. You might have expected, Okada, Tanahashi, those types of guys to be, for Rev Pro to get on the end of the phone with those guys and to have that, that extra bit of star power for it to maybe bring a few more people out and make it feel a little bit more prestigious. I think maybe we found out the fact that there's a New Japan show also this year coming from the same venue 6 weeks later, probably tells you why that's not happening. It's a tough one because I am sympathetic at that point to you because it feels like a big show for Rev Pro, but it doesn't feel like the meaty big show that I think maybe some were expecting. But I don't know what the answer would have been. There's nothing I can come up with personally where I'm like, oh, because I don't think AEW was going to let them have any talent this weekend, as Will's been writing about. So you leave that out. New Japan obviously have given them some guys here. Obviously Ospreay Shingo, chief among it, but that's kind of the limit what you're getting here. outside of, I don't know, Andy Q getting on the phone to Goldberg, I don't know what we kind of could have gotten. But I don't know, maybe it's missing one. It's one, we don't know what, might have been planned and fell apart. I'm sure, as Andy Cullen alluded to on a couple of the podcasts he's done the last couple of weeks, we're going to find, in years to come, he'll do a retrospective podcast of what could have come for this show. But I don't know, is it missing something, JP, if we're being honest and critical with it?
It's probably, it is. I mean, in the essence of what we don't have, we used to always call it Andy Q's Dream Match Factory. We kind of don't have that. There's a lot of stuff that we've kind of already seen or doesn't quite fall into the category. Luke Jacobs and Ishii, as much as I'm going to love it, doesn't fall into the category of dream match. It's something that is it's like the first proper building block for like Luke Jacobs in a world outside of British wrestling, effectively, him having that match. But I wouldn't put it into that. So it's that dream match factor, which I don't know. Like with what they have, the only other people who plug into the gap are an Okada, or even, dare I say it, a Naito that we'll be talking about in a minute. I mean, those are the only kind of people I think that you could plug in there. There were plans to bring in others, but that didn't kind of factor into it. It didn't manage to kind of work itself out. But so you're thinking realistically with the budget they have, who can they possibly bring in? You're talking more New Japan people, really, as much as anything else. That's it. AEW, though, I will say this: they let a lot of their wrestlers do indie shows in the States, so I don't understand any hesitancy. They should be looking to send.
Could have been selective with it, and allowed it to happen. You could have been somewhat selective and gone, okay, well, Keith Lee, we're not doing anything with, or I don't know, insert. Perfect. Any of you, tag Colt Cabana was a former Rev Pro champion. You know what I mean? Like those types of guys. I'm sure you could have let them have them.
Andrade, shits and giggles. If he's not there, but there are those kind of people. It just then becomes the kind of various politics. But it's not like there isn't like a shortage of these wrestlers like knocking around. It's just that they're tied in, aren't they? And that's part of the problem they have. But I think for I still think, and I've maintained this from day one, they'll have a big walk up. There'll be the point when people realize the kind of travel plans and stuff. The railway stuff doesn't help at all, because those people who maybe would have thought of coming down on the Saturday,
so Rev Pro's luck in it, like for that to happen.
They're snake bitten with the RMT. I wouldn't blame him if Andy Gordon hates Mick Lynch. That's probably a bit. Mick Lynch is defending the people in his union. I will always stand up for the rights of trade unions and trade unionists. But it's just worked so badly for them, and I feel for them on that front.
Definitely. We'll switch them back over, and obviously we'll go through the full Rev Pro card next week. Because as Ewan points out rightly there, Shibata is on the show. Ishii, as we mentioned, LP on the show. So there are names there as well. So there's that. But I mean, as Karen kind of says there, Japan is Jordan Stardom's Goddess Tag League. We'll be talking a little bit of Stardom before we go. She's been doing some catch up, JP, but she's saying there, unlikely you got an IWGP Women's or Strong Women's Championship at a Coppperbox for that reason. The timing is a bit odd, but on that note, we should talk some New Japan. It was unbelievably the G1. Remember the G1, JP? It finished this weekend.
Yes. I would say mentioning Karen as well. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to get back after the craziness of All In It as well, to get back recording, get her on, hopefully, open invitation to come up on Spotlight to kind of fill us in with stuff that's been going on as well. And I'll be mentioning like the very minimal Stardom I've managed to see primarily into kind of like one match for that. But yeah, you were going to say G1, baby.
Anytime. Well, on that note, New Japan, G1 tournament season is at least over for New Japan, JP, and we said we'd give it a bit of a post-mortem. Do you feel motivated to do so? I mean, I will say the final weekend, I feel demotivated because I didn't win the pick'em, so I was gutted about that. How did I not predict a Naito win? What was I thinking? I did well in the block, so at least there's that. To be fair to them, a couple of cracking semi-finals match, great final. Naito, as we always talked about, turned it on for the big ones, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I did feel like the Osprey match was phenomenal. Like that was
Yeah.
incredible. As far as semis go, I didn't manage to catch that live. I was gutted I didn't, but yeah, on catch up, very much love that one. It deserved all the plaudits people gave it. Naito and Okada as a final worked really well. Obviously playing at the history and Naito going for the Stardust press and just the molten crowd who. Despite our thoughts on Naito, desperately wanted them to win there. So there's a bit of a pushback for you, JP. They pulled something out, I think, in those last couple of days. I think our conversation, we kind of know what we're going to say about the G1 overall, which is that it was an extremely underwhelming year, and this tournament format is definitely not the G1 of old, but. Yeah, I think we can be down on the tournament, but still say, as far as the ending goes, and maybe the thing that people are mostly going to remember, the final weekend did actually turn out to be very good. But was it too little, too late, JP?
I feel it is too little, too late. However, I would happily eat the humble pie in terms of watching that main event, the G1 final. You were, in your own weird way, transported to a much happier time in New Japan, where the crowd was molten, and it was up from last year. It's like 8,300, up from like 6,800. It's about 1,500 in total. That's up. Now in Japan, those kind of metrics matter. They really do. These two don't wrestle as much, and they are the two biggest stars that they have. So I got kind of slight Okada Nakamura vibes. You remember from that Dome show that they did that was going to be amazing, except there was a fucking typhoon that day. You could see the rain coming in the background. This, though, like, it was just like being transported into when it was almost like the previous few years hadn't happened. Because what we've happened is we've got this Naito win and storyline, and it's like, I'm now the Shuiyaka. So, like, I'm the number one star. And my immediate thought was, I love the match with the card, just in terms of the drama. Like, the match was very, very good. It was like you say, he turned up because he knew he was going to turn up. And he is that kind of a wrestler as well. Beyond this, I can't say I'm excited because it leads to him and Sanada, which then I kind of feel is going to probably lead to him and Tsuji very, very quickly. I could see a Tsuji kind of turn and he ends up taking over, and then they have that element of it. But it's still LIJ law is where we're stuck, and that feels several years past, and everyone's a good bit older. So that overall direction, I'm not a fan of at all. But when watching particularly the Osprey Naito match and the final, I was transported back to a place where I was going, this used to be, like you've said, this isn't the G1 anymore. And this actually felt like G1. It felt like big stars wrestling each other in serious matches that were very, very high quality. That was the thing that I kind of took away in front of crowds that were really enthused as well. And it was, and they fucking loved Naito. It was the right reaction and everything else. And as Karen mentions there, if they mention a lot about his injuries, that is this the last hurrah of it? In which case, his job should be, if you are going to have him winning, because I heard a lot of things. Oh, now he gets to win the belt at Wrestle Kingdom. I was like, I know he's done it before. I fucking watched it. Like we had this. Kenta didn't go into business by himself and running out. So if it ruined the moment for someone, that's down to Gedo and the various other booking issues. I don't think these finals hide away from the fact, or even the uptick in attendance hide away from the fact of the lackluster tournament that it's been throughout, because there's too many people and there's no quality control. Sounds like AEW, but there isn't for this. It needs to be no more than 20. I'd be all right with doing 4 blocks in in a much smaller format. If it was like 6, if you're thinking about we've got to think about the longevity and stuff, but it's not like it was booked well as well. Like, this only kicked into gear in the semi-finals, and one of those semi-finals involved Evil, which just felt like, well, thank God he didn't win, but he's still getting an IWGP title shot next, because that's a story they want to go to, and Evil hasn't meant anything. Even when he was doing his best, dressing up like it was a homage to Elton John and Rocket Man or something, like his best glam rock kind of clobber, just without the glasses. He's awful, and all the tropes are awful and everything else. And it's like the quarterfinals, it's a lot of missed opportunities. Kaito Kiyomiya was ultimately pointless, like, in the tournament.
Yeah, that was a shame, wasn't it? I was really hoping that thread would go somewhere, because in the early tournaments, there was something there, wasn't there? There really was. And there were definitely still moments and fleeting moments of it. It was like, oh, they can lean into something here, like with the with the heat of him being a Noah guy, and there's the Okada thing that's always on the back burner. But no, wasn't going anywhere. Unfortunately, he was just in the tournament to lose.
And I think he was in the tournament to lose as well. They missed a trick with the quarterfinals, because even if it had been the young lads versus the old lads and the old lads win, and then the young they love that kind of couple of years long storytelling, but we didn't even really get that. Hikuleo getting out of the A block was ultimately deemed pointless. He lost to Naito. It's not even like in there the way they build their matches, he can come back in then to challenge him straight away or anything else. Instead, we've got Jeff Cobb doing that, which is fine, but we know he's not going to win it. So there's no any say. So we're just kind of in that mode of dragging our heels slightly, which is where the Coppperbox show might come into the mix. But I do want to state, like, in terms of that main event, I did really, really enjoy it. I can't stress
that. Pull that out 2 days in a row, like after that Ospreay match. I thought he was dead. Like I guess all the jokes somewhere, he found someone who hates the neck more than he does, which was Ospreay. But like, he took a fucking beating in that Ospreay match. That felt like this is the last stand of Naito and you join. And
kicks to the eyes.
Yeah. Ooh. But knowing these guys, though, is it going to be like he's probably still going to be wrestling 10 years from now? We're going to be like, fucking hell, how's Naito still going? That tends to be how things work in this company. But yeah, the fact that he pulled that out 2 days in a row, was great. And I think I ruined it for myself. I was so disheartened with this tournament and the last couple of weeks of it that I didn't watch them live. And I think if I'd watched them live and I've been pulled into the, Willy Won't he kind of winning thing, knowing Naito was winning both of those matches kind of hurt my enjoyment just a little bit, or at least my investment in the near falls and stuff. But I could kind of tell as a spectator, it was like, oh, this crowd are fucking into this, and oh, Naito is delivering a performance that's worthy of the stage. Again, the question was it too little, too late? Because again, that's been my point. Like the last couple of weeks, this G1 is not really a G1. This is the one where the lights have been turned on. It's the end of the night, and we've realized, we're not actually. It's end of a night out, or however you want to use the analogy. This is something completely different, than what we were used to. This is WCW when the set changed. This is, a different era, really, isn't it, of G1? Like, we can kind of leave the memories alone now of what we had and how great it was, and the back-to-back, wall-to-wall, incredible, near 5-star matches we got for year on year. We haven't really had them last couple of years. We had the pandemic in the middle, and now this is what the G1 is. And I think next year our expectations are going to be a lot lower. My enthusiasm for any of it, really, is kind of gone. There's a couple of winners from this. There's a couple of people who kind of stood out for me. I would absolutely say Eddie Kingston made up that he got the tournament that he got. I think that was really, really cool to see. I think that was, we all saw the video, which was really fucking nice to see with him, with Kawada and doing the tour of Japan and just having the matches he had. In this one with Shingo and Ishii, and not just those ones. There were a couple that even in losing to David Finlay, it's still, we went down fighting and gave you a great story. He's going to be back on AEW TV with the New Japan Strong Belt, apparently. So, we got that to look forward to as well. I got that level of enjoyment out of it. I'd say another, and again, these are rare gems. Yota Tsuji massively, showed something that, like, you can't teach what he's got, which is charisma. There's some kind
and a twin brother who's a stuntman who looks the fucking spit of him,
too.
Mate. But you can't teach that.
But he's got like a natural charisma. The way he wrestles is different than everybody else. He's clearly a star. Anytime these, when they finally do the big LIJ roll call at Wrestle Kingdom, I'm sure he'll be out there and we'll have our eye on him. Maybe the 10 comes or something at that point. Maybe might be soon. I don't know, but I feel like we might be heading in that direction if that's coming. He's been an absolute star of this tournament, despite the low expectations of the rest of the cards. Whenever he was on one, it was like, okay, I'll make sure I see that. I'll make sure to see what he's up to, just because it's fun to track. It's fun to see him. Even in the multi-mans this week, he's been great.
He is, isn't he? He's very, very different. He gets the crowd connection, which even he did as a young lion as well. And like I say, I'd go down that direction of having him challenge. Just the fresh direction. Like, I mean, it's not quite Okada getting the belt from Tanahashi, which was like a complete left field call, really, but it worked. You can never argue about the results of that. This one's slightly more obvious, but you do it because you should push him into that mix. And again, he's got a twin brother who looks exactly like him. Like, we never fully exploited the potential of Eric Angle, really, did we? I mean, I think for Shota Tsuji, his name's exactly the same as well. Like, it works absolutely perfectly for that. I also want to give a shout out to someone else in the A block, which is Gabriel Kidd, who I thought...
Yeah, you were high on him. He seems to have split opinion a bit. I think some people find him a bit cringe. Some people have enjoyed it. I've been somewhere in the middle. I think you might have talked me around a little bit, though, on this tournament.
His promo stuff is very immature, but I've said that's kind of reflective of the character and kind of who he is, really, at this point, as a very young man, kind of finding himself. I do think, though, he stood out where a lot of people didn't stand out, really, from a lot of these G1s. There's a lot of people in there, you'd say, what kind of tournament they have, and you wouldn't think of anything there being particularly spectacular. His matches at least stood out, and just the anger and aggression and kicking off. You just thought, oh, this is fucking fun. Like, I'm enjoying, like just something different, for the love of God, livening things up. And I think he's just like, the Japanese fans were reacting, and that's the crucial thing. That's the thing that they notice, and they go, oh, okay. And I think if he gets a good tag run, him and Alex Coughlin, they've got like a good chance to kind of establish themselves. He'll be around for a bit. If I imagine, like Will Ospreay, when it comes to contract season next year, you could see that being a case where he thinks, this, I've done as much as I'm going to do in New Japan, AEW it is. Then if you're looking for people, foreigners to kind of push up the card. Yeah.
He's a better Hikuleo, isn't he? Like, Hikuleo's got tall. He's got tall too, but he's good. It's like, add that to it. It's a different mix, isn't it? Anybody else stand out for you as having notable tournaments, maybe good or bad? Any letdowns for you?
Kaya Kiyomiya, we spoke about as a letdown, and I have to say, putting into it the booking, which I got the idea of the draws, but then they moved away from it, which I wasn't mad about, because I felt like it was telegraphing them, and then they just sort of went off in all sorts of wacky directions and strange losses. So I'd say the Kaya Kiyomiya, but then that also links to Ren Narita as well, who didn't feel like he was going to be one of the big three top stars. Karen mentioned Zack Sabre Jr. I thought he was going to win it, and he didn't feel like he ever kind of came close. And this might have been the year you could have experimented with a new G1 winner, and he would have been able to deliver that post-match promo and deliver in the match quality as well. I'm trying to think of others outside. This is the problem with so many people who are kind of anonymous. There's it's quite a load of them who didn't kind of, like Ishii, for example, would be the highlight of these. And it's sad to see that he's just positioned in a way where his job is effectively to put people over and finish near the bottoms of the blocks. Now,
that's where we are, isn't it?
I know he's older and everything else, so that is where we are with it. It's just not fun to see. But yeah, I think effectively the person who had the most disappointing tournament was Gedo.
It's fair. I mean, Shingo had a solid tournament.
That was a disappointment.
I was a winner because I learned 2 weeks in to skip a lot of the bums in this. Mainly the Aussies and the Bullet Club adjacent, or former Bullet Club adjacent lads. I managed to skip a lot of. Don't think I saw a Yano match this entire tournament, JP, and I feel that's better for it. I feel like a new man.
Yeah,
like having maybe one stuck in somewhere when I had it on live in the background, but managed to not sit down and watch any of them. So that's a win.
I was also going to say as well, I suppose people like Great O'Khan, who you expect at this stage to be kind of pushed up the card, felt like he felt like he was in stasis. He was there because he's a New Japan wrestler, not really for any kind of. There was no stakes for him being in there or anything else. There's never anything kind of teased there. And you have to say Sanada as a disappointment, as just a large non-event in the tournament.
No disappointment. I had no expectations for him.
That's it. Well,
he delivered.
He's disappointing in the sense he's IWGP champion. And I was, do you know what? I just thought, well, put it on him. Maybe it'll make a difference. It doesn't. Deep down, it doesn't. In his core, he can't do the top guy stuff. Holding the belt on him to Wrestle Kingdom, that's going to be interesting, because there'll be the temptation to say, I don't know, a much more interesting storyline is probably to go to Okada Naito again and just have him screw up all the plans by beating Sanada, in whatever the Dominion show that they do, or something along those lines, just to fucking screw around with it, rather than, because I think if it's just going to be a few months of this, it's like, oh, fucking hell, here we go. Oh shit, here we go again. Which is, I think you can put that CJ and GTA San Andreas thing to summarize a lot of perhaps tonight's show.
Well, on the positive front, absolutely, definitely. If you checked out of the tournament, you should 100% find a way to see the Okada Naito match. You should absolutely find a way to see, Naito Ospreay as well. They're probably your two biggest recommends from the tournament in the end.
Okada Ospreay from earlier on. I'll say Gabriel Kidd versus Kaito Kiyomiya just for the kickoff. It was fucking great fun. Really outside of that, there wasn't a lot else that even from a match, like how much of this stuff is really going to go high up on our top 10 list. And that's shocking, really, because the G1 was the banker for your good matches for the year, for the kind of fans like we are, and we didn't get it this year.
Where we going next, JP? What's the plan then? Is it literally just that LIJ at Wrestle Kingdom?
I think so.
Is that pretty much what's happening?
I think that, and then it'll just be sort of Zach will lose the TV belt or something along those lines. It'll be like I'm sure Wrestle Kingdom will be a much better show. It'll be an interesting show because if they get some of those younger guys in singles matches and maybe do Narita versus Zack Sabre Jr. again as a rematch and have Narita win this one as a way of kind of building him up from the lower card with that TV belt, that might be something. So, I mean, I think, again, Wrestle Kingdom will be good. It'll just be how drawn out is it on the way there with the booking and the build.
There we go. Well, yeah, I can't we're having some technical difficulties with Discord here. It's not just because I lost, but as far as the pick'ems go, it was Liam who won it with 123 points overall. Wiped the floor with K-Punk in second, MR, LDF, LWSN in third, Dogfingers in fourth, LF Doom, the other Liam, in fifth. I was hanging about in sixth. I think you're about mid-table, JP, unfortunately. Jamesy, after leading the way the entire way, there's Bernaghetto fell out of the early run in the end. But again, hat tip to Connor for organising the G1.
Thanks everyone for playing it.
Made things a bit more interesting, didn't it? Yeah.
We fucking needed that interest quite a few times.
Maybe we'll go. Like I say, we've got Karen in the chat there. Well, after that, maybe we'll go over it again with Karen at some point. Get her takes on it. She's got a few recommendations here. Zach and Okada and Okan and Taichi was another recommendation of Karen. So yeah, that'll be coming soon. Maybe we could chat to her about that and Stardom and everything else that's going on as tournament season is continuing over there as well. And yeah, she is the one as far as the experts and all that stuff goes. But moving on, JP, to something I'm so crushed I haven't seen at time of recording, but you did. Unfortunately, the CM Punk drama pulled me away, and the hour I had before we recorded, which was going to be spent on a train trying to watch the Marty Jannetty Dark Side. That was a plan. I was going to get it on my phone, I was going to sit there, give it full attention and watch it, and then Punk blew up the world. So unfortunately, I didn't get to it, but did it live up to your expectations, JP? I'm looking forward to watching it. Maybe I'll throw a little bonus review in the weekend show this weekend when I finally get to see it. But what did you make of it, at least?
Oh, it was what I thought it would be, which is ultimately it's quite fucking depressing as much as anything about a man who effectively, like, it seems to be the problem is he lies on Facebook and he lives through Facebook as well, which I'm just thinking, my mum, and putting weird comments up on there and stuff like that, commenting on stuff like an old person on Facebook does. Yeah. And you go, oh, maybe they should meet.
Like, get on.
I think, I don't know if you want anyone to meet, but the problem is he's about like somebody, he's just a professional bullshit merchant, really. And it's more depressing than anything else. But he was probably like, he's sleazy for one. I think most of the people involved, like Pat Tanaka, feels weirdly sleazy. Bruce Beefcake and his wife feel incredibly sleazy there as well. And it's Marty Jannetty, like, it's either him telling a lie, not taking responsibility for anything. So like Chad Austin and stuff like, he's like, Sean got away free. And it's like, Sean didn't deliver the move, mate. Like when Chad Austin broke his neck, if you're not aware of this, that originally the settlement was 24 million that he was going to get. He was a job guy, and they show the move. of like how he broke his neck, and and it was like, well, yeah, Sean shouldn't take responsibility for it. He's having a lot of bitterness as Sean. Sean got the chances I didn't get, but you also get the impression that Sean realised that you can't knock around with Marty Jannetty because he revels in all of this stuff. You can tell he looks back on it and he's just like, this is all great. All great memories. I had a girl in every town and everything else like this. And it's just like, well, ultimately, it's kind of led to your collapse and destruction because you're just a mess of a human being, unable to form kind of normal relationships. You have a look at his ankle, which is proper manky, by the way, like complete, like he can't walk.
I saw some images of that.
Oh, it's horrible on that. And it shows where he gets rocked on there. I mean, the most calmer of the talking heads is Al Snow on there as well. But it's just like, he behaves like a dick as well. Like, and he'll tell a story like he was told that he needed to go to a clinic for addiction and ended up dating his counselor. And you go, well, you know, that's not the case. And you've got this one woman who clearly, you know, there's still a, you know, that candle that she's got for Marty Jannetty that he's going to get himself together. And it's just like, and he's been interviewed. She's been interviewed, and it's just
it sounds sad, all in all.
It's very, 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 very sad as well. And it's just
I'm gonna bring it up now.
Stories he's telling where it's like Pat Tanaka's asleep, and so he does what a normal person does, which is pull out a pistol and shoot the mirror. To which Tanaka wakes up and goes, "What the fuck is going on?" And he's like, "Well, you were asleep, and I had to wake you up." Like it's Pat Tanaka's fault. And the reason he's fallen asleep, he's probably been up for 4 or 5 fucking days partying with this fucking maniac. So it's like, well, no wonder he can't bloody sleep. And
Jesus.
He talks about like he's basically, I can't think of the exact phrase, but he talks about himself like he's God's whipping boy. Oh, that's it. He's Gat. He's God's amusement toy. So everything is just him being punished by God, and he never takes any responsibility himself. He never grew up, and this is the state that he's ended up in this case. And he's not going to get better. And in terms of like the murder stuff, they look into it. It's nothing there because he's a bullshit merchant, and he tells these stories, and they're trying to almost say, well, maybe it happens in the end. You know, maybe it really kind of happened. And you just think, no, a lot of this stuff didn't ever really happen. He says this because he's desperately lonely and sad, and he feels that by bullshitting, that's the way he's going to get attention. In the way that we've all known people like that, who feel like I have to lie in order to impress you, rather than thinking if you speak to me like a normal human being, I can relate to you, therefore you can have a proper conversation. But if someone's just lying to you on a constant basis about how great they are and all the things they've done, you just get bored of it. So it's basically 40 odd minutes of that is what you get.
How did they choose it to be last? I don't understand. Like,
I think, and this is where the series takes the turn for the worse. If you think about where it started off, and it was like generally very good, very solid, quite niche stories. The Chris Candido stuff they handled like really well, and in this one, it started to go more down a salacious route. The Bash at the Beach 2000 episode is still horrible. I still feel dirty even talking about it. And this one, I think they just chose because they thought, oh, we'll get a bit of buzz for it, but it doesn't make for a good documentary. Jeff said it best in the chat. If you can remember the guy from the Far Show, the old guys, I'm going to go out, and then something horrible happens to him, and he just goes, "Oh bugger." That's how he sees himself. That's how he sees himself. It's that bloke.
Oh, depressing. I don't kind of like. I've loved the season overall. There's been real low points. Don't get me wrong. Bash at the Beach being one. This sounds like it's another. I think I'm still positive on the season overall. Though, like you say, the Candido episodes, the Bam Bam episode, the Adrian Adonis episodes. I've got good memories of the stuff they did here, even the stuff with the twins and the car crash and all of that. That was a really interesting little side note in the Adonis story. There was all these fun little characters. I found out who Ricky Johnson was this year. That was a laugh, I found out that Abdullah the Butcher's also got a bullshitting brother as well, despite that was another one of the negative episodes. I suppose it was plotting that out. Actually, it was a series of extremes this year. Like, they were either great, and the Matt Bourne episode, another one I really enjoyed, despite some inconsistencies, and then they were really shit, which sounds like Bash on the Beach. This one,
Abdullah the Butcher,
Abby's probably the other best example as well. I wonder where they go next year. Like, what are they going to do? Like, more Vince McMahon content. I don't know. Like I don't know. If
It should
is
just
too
be a
scared to do
season
that.
on Vince at this
They
point.
should. That should be the final season. Go out in a blaze of glory. Yeah, WWE like apparently
CM
paid for
Punk.
production somewhere or something. Yeah, yeah, you could do that. Yeah. Oh, the JYD episode as well. You and the mentions there. Very much enjoyed that as well. It's a shame to see it kind of peter out like that. Really, when it was so strong in parts as well. It just feels like some of the episodes were, you know, well thought out and done with care, and then some of the episodes, which it sounds like this Jannetty one and the Bash of the Beach one, were just, you know, salacious TV for the sake of it. Maybe tempting a ratings grab by putting Vince Russo front and center in 2023. Don't tell Matty I said that. But yeah, there we go. That's a shame. But yeah, maybe we could do Sid Non's stabbing in Blackburn. There you go. That's an old story we've all
the death of Yokozuna. Have we had that?
No, I don't think we've said we want to do a podcast on that. I want to go. I want to be.
Denise Van Outen is one of the talking heads there, looking shifty on camera. What the fuck are we doing here, folks?
I know Gareth wants to go as well to the. I can't remember the name of the hotel now where he died. We'll go find the site of where it was on Liverpool 1 and see if we can you know, uncover any witnesses or something like that. We could do our own investigation. Could be a one. It could work. No. Oh well, we'll see. We'll see what they come up with next year. But yeah, as we
left a big breakfast complaining of heart palpitations. Some questions, and it wasn't the fry-up on set either.
That could be 10 minutes of it as well. That could work. But yeah, what else you been watching, JP? Anything else you want to throw in before we get out of here?
So there was a big, and I haven't seen all of it, and I'm hoping that when I do get to record with Karen, this is stuff that we'll be able to go through. But I do want to mention a match. It was for the IWGP Women's Championship, and it was Maya Iwatani versus Utami Hayashishita, and it was because they had a pay-per-view this weekend. In the weird way, they've got the 5-star Grand Prix going on. They'll have the standard pay-per-views. So there was a match on this, and it was more of a kind of a stacked. It was much more of a kind of like a stacked card as well. They set up Julia versus Deonna Purrazzo in the US for New Japan Strong for that Impact show in there as well. They had someone called Megan Bain, who I don't know, who's like a quite a tall wrestler from the US, who just kind of seemed to act like Monster effectively against Tam Nakano, the World of Stardom Championship. But yeah, this match, I thought it was cracking. It was 20 minutes. It's the gif of, I mean, this is where the things that I'm not entirely aware of, but Maya Iwatani has a reverse super poison Rana that she delivers, and fuck me, does she deliver it into like a kind of a roll up as well. And that was the finish, and that was the thing that was going around, because it was just like, oh my god, that was brilliant. But as a match, it was very good. 20 minutes, like starts off with the kind of classic feeling out process. You've got the middle bits with the kind of exchanges, and they go to outside, and then towards the end, the last sort of 5-6 minutes, it gets really good and kind of really heated. I mean, I'd go sort of 4.25 on it, but I still think it's like a hell of a match. Like I thought, like really good fun from this, and it kind of, they are the promotion that seems to be, like, I always think above all else, just kind of books generally quite sensibly, even if it feels like their schedule is incredibly overcrowded. There's stuff from the tournament I still want to see involving Suzuki and some of the other big matches they've had up on there as well. But it was, yeah, like good stuff. It'll be interesting though to know what happens with this women's title and where it goes. Like, you would have thought it should have been defended as much as anything on the G1 finals as well. You would have thought that's perfect, like kind of something to put in the undercard for the day. But maybe it will work its way back in, but it still feels like it's very much like another title in Stardom as part of it. But yeah, I want to give a shout out for that match. And then I had to put on some TripleMania for this. And I was
going to say quickly on the Stardom front. So Karen says there that there's a non-5-star Grand Prix pay-per-views, apparently a few of them between now and September's end. What was the story with Asuka? Like, why is she kicking off on Twitter about Stardom right now? Like, what's she after? It looked like she'd been hacked, but apparently no. Apparently there's this history with her, and she was outspoken when she was younger or something like that. And then, in her opinion, Stardom was created to counter the criticism she had about Japanese women's wrestling. It was really weird,
extreme way to go.
Tweets. Yeah.
I'll show you as I set up my wrestling promotion.
Yeah,
I'm not sure they were the motives of Rossi Ogawa, though. Do you? Knowing what we know about him, I'm not sure that's exactly what he was motivated by. Yeah, that felt very weird. I wondered if something's lost in that story. I'm not quite sure of the reasons of it. As
So
Karen
some
says here
fans
in the
dug up
chat,
some old interviews, right? Yeah.
who is the doyen of this stuff and absolutely knows her onions on it, that this feels like this is the kind of like people shit stirring basically about stuff that she had said before on there. But yeah, it's a, but I haven't got Kyrie Sane anymore. She'll be going back to WWE, or it's heavily rumored to be going back. So I think it's going to be interesting, Julia coming over again for the Impact one, because that appears to be something that's happening more and more. Whether or not there's going to be more of a sort of protracted push around it. Does Mercedes Moné come back in for a couple of matches? There's still a lot of stuff that she hasn't necessarily done there as well. So always a promotion that need to keep an eye on the stuff that's going on, because it's, dare I say, it's women's wrestling booked well. Something we don't see a lot of in the US, really, outside of Impact.
In the West.
We're honest. Yeah, in the West.
And even then, yeah. But you're going to say as well, yeah, I still can't believe there was actually a TripleMania this weekend. Like,
right.
When was the last one, genuinely? 6 weeks ago? At best?
I think less than that. It feels like a month. If that feels like 3 weeks. I'm sure of it. It's something daft, isn't it? Did you see any of this at all? Did you manage to get around to see any of this?
I've been waiting for your review of it. No, I don't think anyone did. This came and went. This, like, the fact that this was even this weekend, I think was a mystery to many.
It did. It did feel like this was like the kind. I was scared, first of all, because I put it on and I went, "Oh, the army's here. That's good." It didn't look like it was a big crowd because it was quite dark in there. If you watch it in English commentary, it absolutely loses something. Dombrowski, I don't mind. Larry Dallas sounds like a man who's just unbuckled his jeans and emptied a pot noodle onto a plate before watching this show, because he sounds like the most sleazy motherfucker you've ever heard. Like, it's awful. That's a League of Gentlemen reference in case people weren't aware. But he does. And the problem is that in some ways you need to be hearing Hugo, but the whole crowd are hearing that. So they have to lower, like, the sound, the audio doesn't quite work. And Dombrowski is just like, he's overselling everything. It's like, this is amazing. This is why AAA is great. And I go, great's a strong word to be using about AAA, but okay, go on. And I was scared because I saw the military bit, and then they went straight into one of the matches, and I was like, whoa, where's the double earn action? Well, thank Christ, halfway through the show, apparently it went live on Space, whatever that is, not in space. Again, I don't know what aliens would make of AAA. That's a conversation for another time. Promoted by Mortal Kombat as well this time around. That was the big player in it. And obviously, Bardell, the Mexican petrol, is the only way I can describe it on that. Yeah, Taya Valkyrie did a big blade job. The main event, what happened? Sam Adonis lost, of course. Big blade job. Yep. Loads of sloppiness, of course. Vikingo had a big flippy match. Yep, because that's why you've got Jack Cartwheel and Mike Bailey in there. You weren't under any doubts in there. Old lads, shit counts. I'm trying to think of what else did we see there. QT Marshall won the Latin American title by pulling off Pentagon Jr.'s mask and with a cheap roll-up. That's fine if he stays there. He's just Jeff Jarrett. He's just a Jeff Jarrett figure.
Kind of like that. That was one where, like, last time I made a proper effort to watch his ambulance match. I think I'm enjoying. That's the place for him in the world. I think this is it. Mexico.
And Taya Valkyrie's blade job was fucking brutal. She was pissing blood throughout as well. And yeah, and she lost the title there. They had, or what is it? Yeah, I think other than that, it was a TripleMania. It was exactly what you'd expect. There was a Negro Casas match who was there at the beginning and then he'd left. They did have like some cracking video packages, and is then kind of ruined by the general calamity. I didn't see Vampiro around the place. I may well have missed that at some point. But yeah, I think they described Pagano as AAA Sabu. But yeah, it was the usual AAA nonsense that we kind of go into. There's a part of me thinking maybe I should be watching CMLL as much as
Alan Farrell would tell you that you should be watching that.
He would do.
That would be your Puro and Lucha mix. I think that would be a better use maybe at the time. I just felt too soon for the TripleMania. I didn't feel motivated to watch it live, and then catching it back up is never going to happen, is it?
Imagine it in your head what happened, and you know what happened. Other than, like I say, I was scared we didn't get the double earn action with Maricela Pena, but no,
That's
we
a
did.
real loss. Oh,
we did. No, we got it. I've sent you the photo, mate. because
okay.
how many times we've used a photo of that woman with, again, I think it's weird to go out everywhere publicly with the urns of your dead brother and your dead husband. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But she seems to fucking revel in it. The Kingo must be sick of carrying that as well. It's just like Jesus, and they do it all the time. But yeah, AAA is going to AAA, and they AAA'd as much as anything you could ever imagine.
There we go. Well, that's it. That's pretty much it, really. I will say, as we've been on air, a little bit more news on the Punk stuff. Not that really changes what we said before. Apparently, it has been confirmed, as I'd kind of half heard, that Punk has apologised to Hangman Page directly via text message, according to our friends at the Voices of Wrestling Patreon. Also, he claims he had nothing to do with Hangman Page being not allowed into the building on Saturday. And if he was there, he would have attempted to speak to him. And he did say to a flagship source, according to Voices of Wrestling, I am 100% the reason Nick Nemeth and Christopher Daniels were sent home. So at least he admits that. He shouldn't be, though. Like, that's... Oh, Tony.
Fucking hell, Phil. For the love of Christ, man. I mean, yeah.
Growth, though. Growth. He apologised to Hangman. Growth. Come on. We'll take it. There you go.
He's my age, mate. We should be well into the stage of being used to giving out apologies.
He's not
I've
changing.
just had enough of my life, so...
That's the thing. They get to a point in life where you don't change anymore, doesn't it? And that's well and truly where CM Phil is. But there we go. Pack spotlight this week. Plenty off our chest to think, and more to come. Obviously, as we said earlier, bit late now, but the video version is available on YouTube as a play. If you want to hit as a replay, if you want to hear us go through all those points again, I'm sure we'll probably go through similar ones next week. But who knows what can happen this week? JP Dynamite and Collision might put us in a great mood for next week's spotlight. But in the meantime, there will be a special version of Observe This coming out, where me and JP are going to be looking at the original All In and the build to it. Might even throw in a sneaky bonus bit on the announcements of it as well, and everything that meant, which will lead into a flashback review that me, JP, Gareth and Matty are going to be doing for next week. That'll be out before, obviously, the big weekend, where we're going to be reviewing the original All In 5 years later. Unbelievably, it has been 5 years.
Fuck.
So, and then we'll compare and contrast with our original takes 5 years ago when we recorded it back on the old podcast as well. So, check all of that out. Anything else to plug, JP? Anything else to say?
Patreon.com/GRAPPL. Go there. Deep cuts. Christian in TNA. Like you mentioned, Observe This. We've got the weekend show coming up this weekend as well. Christ knows what other fun-filled goodness that we're going to be getting into in the meantime. You've mentioned it, and with the hell of a back catalogue now at this point. So if you sign up to the Patreon, it's all nicely laid out. Benno's done a brilliant job curating it. So for the particular type of shows we do, if you want to hear any of those, any of the other flashbacks, any of the other deep cuts, mixtapes, film clubs, 5-1s that we've done along there. So patreon.com/GRAPPL.
Thank you. Thank you to our live patrons who've tuned in. We're going to sign off. They've given us lots of suggestions for titles and music and stuff like that as well. So we'll be taking that all into account. But thank you, live patrons. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in on the audio on Spotify or wherever else. Thank you to our Kings of the Mountain, Carl Gack, Robert Brocky, Coronel Laughlin, Eddie Sideburns, Chris Platt, Simon Gunn, and Sam Mulvaney. And all there is to say is, we will see you again next week for the big AEW All In preview show. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Good night, all.